Hello.
Yes.
Evening, Mayor.
How's everybody doing today?
All right.
Great, Mayor.
Beautiful people. Hello, Mr. Robert, Mr. Joe.
I'm here.
Here.
All right, look at Casey. Look at Casey. I see you with your pinstripes on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready? Ladies and gentlemen, are we ready? Are we ready to move forward?
Ready.
Ready here.
Yes, sir.
Let's get this show on the road. City of Lamarque, City Council Workshop Agenda, April 12th, 2021. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarque, Texas will conduct a workshop via telephone, video conference hosted through Zoom as provided in the attached notice on Monday, April 12th, 2021, beginning at 6 o'clock for the purpose of considering the following agenda. Item 1, the meeting has been called to order. And item 2, there will be a roll call. Robin, are you present?
I am. Yes, sir.
Robin, would you please commence in the roll call?
Councilmember District B,
Present.
Councilmember District C,
Present.
Councilmember District D,
Present.
and Mayor.
Present. Thank you, Robin. We are now moving into our item 3, citizens participation. This will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public at this time. Any person with city-related business who has signed up may speak to council on a specific agenda item, limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. Robin, do we have any citizens or guests wishing to speak at this time?
I do have a couple on here. There is Stephanie Quinton. Miss Quinton.
Okay, let me get you. I was trying to get off mute. Yeah, it's this Quentin Severin with the big ass crawfish mash.
Okay.
Okay, so I've seen the paperwork and everything. So we're asking for $12,000 this year, and that's due to the money we're spending on parking. We're also donating to Kid Fish, and then the $5,000 for the deposit we're going to give back to the city for the park as a donation. So that's what we're kind of asking for this year. Y'all sponsored every year. We appreciate everything y'all done. Thank y'all for getting an emergency meeting, getting all this taken care of this year, because obviously we've had a hard time trying to get stuff done, but we're getting all of it together now, and hopefully we're going to have a great year. Is there any questions y'all have as far as?
Quentin, we are not allowed to respond to you during this portion of our agenda item. If there is any response to you, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Tink, because I'm looking at the workshop, but I believe there may be more space later on in our agenda.
Yeah, there's an agenda item related to this, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for expediting that comment, Tink.
Okay, I'll just wait till then.
Yes, sir. That's what I was going to say. If you would wait till we get to that agenda item, perhaps there will be some council discussion and questions that will be posed to you at that time. Would that be okay with you?
That's fine.
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you for everything you do, and thank you for participating tonight. Robin.
I saw there's another number. It starts with 409, ends in 492.
That's me. Clarence Caldwell.
Hello, Mr. Caldwell.
Hi.
How you doing?
Your turn to speak.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor, Mr. Mayor Keith Bell, on all the great work that you're doing for the city. And I'll tell you, the people and the community really need a leader like what you're doing. You're doing an awesome job. Really appreciate that.
Sure.
Also, I'd like to thank everybody that's helping me on this issue that I'm dealing with. Issues with my neighbor, and hopefully we can get all this stuff resolved real soon. And other than that, everybody be safe and be blessed.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. On behalf of the rest of the council, we certainly appreciate your support and your involvement in our city, your participation in every aspect of this city, certainly not just your issues with your neighbor. Thank you for that.
No problem. Have a blessed day.
Next, we have, Richard Loftus.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I got a prepared statement here and some questions. So basically, good evening, Mayor and members of council. I, Richard Loftus, along with members of the community, have a few questions for City Manager Tink Jackson. City Manager Tink, you have an update on the agenda on transparency. So there was an interview you did with Darian Trotter on Fox 29 News on March 14th, 2017. You said that, and I quote, "You're not angry about new complaints and that city leaders should be held accountable and growing pains are sometimes necessary." So with that being said, and that's an end quote there. So with that being said, my first question to you, Tink, is that I received a call from Mayor Bill stating that you were going to have my political signs removed that discredited an illegal candidate that you perhaps support. So my question is, what authority do you have to remove any political sign during an election period? And isn't that illegal to do so? And why did you choose my signs? And also, why has the city not responded to a non-resident that's being allowed to hold positions on boards and commissions while using 2 different addresses and now currently using a 3rd to run for city council, all while city officials have known about this perjured offense? And last, why has one officer been fired for an inmate supposedly urinating on the floor while another officer is seen on video, and this is my opinion, murdering a young man and still allowed to have his job? So those are questions that I'd like to have answered on the record.
Mr. Loftus, is
Yes,
that the end of your statement?
That is. And also, if we don't have enough time to get these questions answered, I would ask that Mayor and Council that you give Mr. Jackson enough time to answer these questions, or myself time to speak again if need be.
Okay. There is an agenda item for appointments to boards and commissions. You made a reference, Mr. Loftus, to a potential issue there. As the workshop progresses, you will have an opportunity as a citizen to make comments during that agenda item as it relates to that board or that commission. I think that's relevant. As far as the other questions that you have posed, the city manager and the city attorney may elect to respond with points of information, or they may elect to not respond according to our citizens' request for hearing. It just depends on whether or not they think things need to be clarified as it relates to your comments. And so at this time, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Cornell, do you see any need to respond with points of information or clarity to Mr. Loftus's question?
Jerry, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
So I would say that, according to our agenda, questions for the city manager should really be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. That said, to my knowledge, no political signs have been removed as of this point. Mr. Jackson, do you want to comment on that?
No political signs have been removed. Some signs that were in particular right-of-ways were discussed, and there's still not been a decision as to whether that's on us to take them down or whether it's on the other entity to take them down.
What entity is that?
TxDOT. And as far as the other stuff goes, Mayor, we don't discuss personnel issues.
Okay,
We
Fair
can't
enough.
discuss personnel issues.
fair enough. How about as we move forward through this hearing, how about we arrange for Mr. Loftus to visit with you personally on that question about personnel so that y'all can have a conversation and have a communication about that. Would that be fine?
That would be fine, but I would not expect there to be answers pertaining to individual staff members because we're not allowed to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whatever that conversation looks like, it needs to happen outside of this event here is what I'm getting at. Does that make sense, everybody?
Mr. Mayor, Joe Coppinger, I have a question. This is just to clarify, not for Mr. Loftus, but for the city manager, Mr. Jackson. You mentioned that, and I'm familiar with this, right? The regulations with regard to TxDOT on right-of-ways and signs. Actually, there's disclaimers that are required on our political signs with regard to that. Does the city have an equivalent requirement for political signs?
So we do, but that said, if I could just pause this discussion here, this is outside of what's on the agenda. And so if council wants to discuss our political sign regulation at a future meeting, we can certainly do that. And Mr. Compion, if you have questions about them that you would like to ask me directly, I'm also happy to answer those. But at this point, this is not an agenda item.
That's all I needed. I just needed a yes or no, whether we had it. If I wanted to discuss, I'll come back and I ask for it, which we probably will. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Fair enough. And dear, you are correct. Certainly, this is outside of our agenda item, but we wanted to make sure that Mr. Loftus got some sort of direction to get his answers, and he did. And so we're good with that, Mr. Loftus. As it relates to the agenda item of appointment, you will definitely be invited back into the discussion. Let's, Robin, do you have any other citizens request for hearing?
There is a Jason Silva. He may be here for another item on the agenda. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. I'm here for another item on the agenda. I am Jason Silva from ShopSpotter, and my colleague Ron Teachman is on as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. If there are no other citizens requests for hearing, then we'll move to now item 4, discussion regarding ShotSpotter and our similar gunshot technology. This item has been placed on the agenda, I would say, by the entire city because we are concerned about random gunfire in our community, certainly by myself and the council. And so this is an attempt to obtain information on how we would go about resolving some of the issues of potential random gunfire in our city. And at this point, we're going to ask, is Chief Jackson available?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
All right, Chief Jackson, take it away.
Okay, thank you. So gunshot detection systems, of which ShotSpotter is a vendor, they were on the radar a while back. We did look into them. At the time, the pricing that I got from the vendor that I spoke with was cost prohibitive for the city. But I don't know if the technology is changing, or I don't know if the pricing structure has just been modified by companies. But I did meet with Mr. Teachman today regarding the service, the shot spotter system for the city, and it was very informative. I got a lot of good information, and you know, we're still in the very preliminary stages of this. I have reached out to some other vendors, still have not heard back from them yet. I anticipate hearing back from them sometime this week. But I believe that Mr. Teachman is here to present council with a presentation on the product that his company offers, or the company he works for. And I can tell you, when I reviewed it, when I met with Mr. Teachman today, there are no downsides to this system. I mean, it would be a huge benefit to the city and to the citizens. It's just a matter of council's decision on funding. So, Mr. Jackson, I guess at this point, I would invite Mr. Teachman to speak to council.
That's absolutely fine, Kirk. It's all yours.
Thank you. Mr. Teachman.
Thank you. Members of the council and everybody else attending this, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. I've been told I have just a few minutes. What I'd like to do, if I may, is show you a very short 4-minute video from a community perspective, a collection of testimonials from some of our client cities, and then I'll go into the specifics of how it works, what it does, and why you should consider bringing this to La Marque. So let me begin by showing you this video.
My 16-year-old son was murdered on April 23rd, 2006. He was a really good guy, didn't even know he was in harm's way, and I guess some guys, you know, mistaked him for someone else, and just really just start shooting. And my son received 1 shot in the head, you know. So I decided to launch a foundation in his honor.
I do know that in fact there were several lives saved, and one actually in our community due to ShotSpotter. A man was shot on our streets, in our streets, and no one had alerted police. Therefore, the police showed up and the man was not responsive. So they administered CPR to this man and saved his life. He's alive today because of ShotSpotter.
I do prayer walks throughout the city and work with the community very closely and work with trying to help prevent violence in our community. Our community is different after ShotSpotters the tool was employed in our community because gun violence has gone down, homicides have gone down, assaults have gone down. And so there's just a bunch of data that says that crime has gone down in the community, and I really attribute that to having ShotSpotter in the community.
It gives me a peace of mind knowing that if there's a gunshot picked up by the sensors in the area, police will be on the scene quickly. They don't need to rely on witnesses to call 911. And it gives me a little more security when I'm leaving or when I'm still at work.
Communities are traumatized day in and day out by gun violence. So one of the elements of our intervention program is street outreach workers. And those street outreach workers go to hot spots, hot places in the community, and ShotSpotter helps to identify where those places are. So it's a very, very effective tool for us.
With ShotSpotter having been deployed in Greenville for a year now, we've seen significant reductions in overall gunshot and gunshot wounds within the city of Greenville. This technology stands to make your life safer, to make your family and your friends safer.
I'm a #1 fan of this ShotSpotter because I've been out there and seen the difference in how it works as if we had ShotSpotter or if we didn't.
ShotSpotter is completely transforming the way police go about the business of responding to, investigating, and ultimately preventing and reducing gun violence. The mainline story is a community feeling super positive about the police department that forever never showed up when there were incidents of gunfire, that now are showing up, and they're showing up quickly, precisely, and respectfully because they want to serve that community.
What I would say to another resident of another city that's a little skeptical about ShotSpotter is put yourself in my shoes or other people's shoes that have lost children in your community.
So how do we do it? Let me now switch screens and walk you through the how, the what, and the why, if you will, and share some of the slides that I shared with the chief earlier today. And by the way, I want to publicly acknowledge he was very generous with his time on very short notice. I think we were together about an hour or more today. So I know he's committed to addressing the gun violence problem in your city just by his expression of concern that he shared with me. We think ShotSpotter meets the mission of your city, and we believe ShotSpotter will help meet the mission of the police department. And so here's what we think our value proposition is. Taking it from a position of a community resident like the ones you saw in the video. Tonight, in some neighborhood, somewhere in your 14 square miles of city, there may be gunfire. And here's the reality that we're addressing. Most gunfire in cities across America do not get reported to 911, do not get reported to the police. The overwhelming majority, over 80% nationally, does not get reported. Now, what happens then? It emboldens and encourages shooter to keep shooting because they don't see a police response. And that causes normalization, that causes accommodation. And as perpetrators feel emboldened, and that increases your likelihood of victimization, residents wonder why the police aren't there. They don't understand there's a disconnect between the 911 system and the police response. And I'll get into that in a couple of seconds. But the biggest problem I saw as a chief in the two cities that I served, which is why I brought ShotSpotter into those cities, was the public perception gap. The people think the police know everything. They watch cop shows on TV where every crime gets solved and every bad guy gets arrested. So let me ask you rhetorically, those of you on this Zoom session, if the people of Marque think the police know, but the police don't show, what might they think about their police department? When I asked the chief that question today, his response was spot on. They think we don't care. Now, that is not the blemish on the men and women of the Marque Police Department. What I'm talking about is the 911 system is failing you because people don't call. And at ShotSpotter, we see it as a cycle that continues. Gun violence goes on. There's a negative perception about the city, particularly its police department. It erodes community trust. And all this puts police officers at risk because they don't have the information about the gunfire when it's occurring also. But at ShotSpotter, we asked the question, what if there was a way to address all these concerns? Officer safety, public perception, community trust, and violence reduction. So at ShotSpotter, we help the city detect, protect, and connect. We detect the gunfire. We detect the shots. We give you a precise location where it's occurring. And we give you tactical intelligence about the event, such as, is there more than one shooter? We help protect the police, enabling them to better protect the community. We help legitimize the police department's allocation of resources, that is the chief's plan about how he deploys his personnel. And again, we protect the public. We connect the police to the crime scene. That enhances their ability to solve crimes, to gather evidence like witnesses and forensic evidence. We connect with other capabilities like integrating with camera systems and license plate readers and such. And we connect the police to the community. We've been in business for over 25 years. We're currently serving in excess of 110 cities. 110 is the last number we gave to our investors at our last quarterly meeting. We have a 97% customer satisfaction rating, and our 35 patents distinguish us in the public safety industry. So why bring this to Marque? Well, a quick overview, and I'm respectful of my limited time. As I said, most cities, gun violence is not reported. Why? Why is that? Well, ordinarily we'd have a interactive exchange here, but let me just tell you what I hear from communities across the country that I've traveled to installing ShotSpotter. Why don't people call 911? A number of reasons, but the foremost common is they're not sure that noise is gunfire. They don't want to be crying wolf, if you will, to the police if it's not. It could be, they think, fireworks, backfire, jackhammers, or some industrial noise. They think someone else is calling closer to the event. After all, they just heard a noise, looked out the window, didn't see anything. They're afraid if they call the police, they'll send a squad car. And what if the shooter or his group of gangs see that? They don't want to be the target tomorrow. They want to protect their families. And lastly, they've given up because they don't see a police when they hear gunfire, and that again causes a cycle of resignation. So how does this look in Lamarque when you don't have ShotSpotter? Someone fires a gun, nobody calls. If someone does call, where do we send the police? Well, we send the police to the caller's address. That may put the officer in harm's way because we don't know where the shooter is. We only know where the caller is. And how far away is the caller? Our analytics with our customers show that the caller is often quite some distance away, 780 feet on average. And as the officer is talking to the caller, we could have someone shot, bleeding out, and we're not giving them critical first aid care because we don't know where they are. We only know where the caller is. From the chief's perspective, and from the department's perspective, and for those of you on the council, there's a quality of life issue here when the police don't respond, if the people think the police don't care. Now, that narrative is false, but you understand where it comes from. So what happens? If mom or grandmom or someone in the family thinks the police don't care, he is ripe. He is absolutely ripe to be recruited by gangs who come saying, we'll protect you, join us, we'll take care of you and your family. And that's often how gang recruitment starts, the idea of communities having to self-police. And also, parents or grandparents don't let their kids or grandkids go out and play after school. Don't let them use playgrounds nearby. This is part of the quality of life adaptation when you have the pervasive fear of gun violence, when it becomes normal. The chief is trying to run a department based on data-driven decision-making or intelligence-led policing, but as to gun violence, he's only seeing the tip of the iceberg, and you can't manage what you can't measure. So let me briefly explain how it works. We would come to Lamarque, we would set up an infrastructure. We're designing it, we're building it. Just like with your cell phones, you subscribe to a vendor like AT&T, they built an infrastructure, a cell phone antennas, mini cells, if you will, to give you the coverage you want. You subscribe to a service. Our relationship would be similar. We'd set up sensors on rooftops of buildings or on utility poles. We would calibrate the system. And then when someone fires a gun in the coverage area, we would detect and locate the gunfire. Detect it because our sensors would hear it, and locate it because they would timestamp it to the millisecond, and then mathematically calculate where the shooting took place based on triangulation or multilateration. And you all know that the speed of sound is slow because you remember a conversation as a child about lightning and thunder. The speed of sound is very slow and easily measurable. So then all that data is sent up to the cloud where a machine classifier predetermines that event to be gunfire, but we add to the machine classifier human intelligence. That was, we have people located in an incident review center, and all the data is sent to them through modem technology. They listen to the audio of the event. They look at the acoustic signature, and then look at the sensor participation. What I mean by that is, if the sensors are hearing it in a line, it's more likely to be gunfire. If it's in a circular pattern, it's more likely to be fireworks or backfire or something else that radiates omnidirectionally. Gunfire is a very linear event. In under 60 seconds, your police department will respond to the scene with the tactical intelligence they need for a safe response. Now, we'll simultaneously send this alert out to your 911 communication center, to the officers' laptops out in the squad cars or their desktops at headquarters, to their phones, and even to their smartwatches. We perform both on Android and iOS platforms. How do we protect? And I'm just going to summarize here. We help to protect the police because we give tactical intelligence about the event to the police department directly, such that they would see on their screen the overhead view. A noise would alert them to look at their screen. They'd see the number of rounds fired, the street address, the timestamp. We let them know if it's a multiple shooter, high capacity incident, a full automatic if there was, and we would give them a timestamp of each shot fired and a sequence of the shots fired so they know who shot first. Really important in a multiple shooter incident. We allow the officers to see the gunfire that's occurred since their last shift, whether they worked yesterday, so they're coming to work tonight at 6 o'clock, or tomorrow morning at 6, as it were. If they've been off for a couple of days, they see 3 days of data, and they can see 7 days of data. And through a different portal, they can see the historical data for as long as your city's been a customer. And let me finally close in my time that's limited to connect them to the crime scene, community, and to other capabilities. We get them right to the crime scene so they can gather evidence, such as putting shell casings to the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, or NIBIN. And independent studies have shown increased evidence collection on homicide and robbery cases with gunshot detection technology. We can integrate with cameras, license plate readers, and other technologies to give you a multiplier effect on those. Imagine redirecting a camera into line of the shots fired to capture the shooting or to see who had flight from the crime scene or arrival to the crime scene. And then lastly, integrating with other programs like street outreach programs, as you saw in the video, focused deterrence programs, and one that's particularly important to me, and that is trauma-informed care, recognizing that our young people who are exposed to trauma, like gun violence, may not just be harmed psychologically, but physiologically. That's called adverse childhood experiences, and that disrupted neurodevelopment, which is the physiological response to trauma, has long-term effects. Our healthcare industry knows about this. They talk about social determinants of health, and neighborhood environment is a key indicator. Closing this, she looks out her window now, and now she'll see a police response from your police department, the Marque PD. Fast enough, we hope, to make an arrest of the perpetrator. And this is the essence of precision policing, only arresting the serial shooters, not mass incarceration, but only identifying those shooters who are causing most havoc in our neighborhoods. A very small percentage of our population is driving a lot of our violence. Get them there fast enough to render first aid. The hospitals say time is tissue. And then in closing, set up the crime scene, talk with witnesses, gather evidence. But before they take down the yellow tape, knock on doors, ring doorbells, a couple of houses in each direction. And as that person answers the door, do a welfare check. We're here because we care about you. The objective is to change the narrative from the police don't care to the police are there. And with that, my time is up. Let me close and just ask, what do you think? And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you for this awesome presentation. And certainly we want to open this discussion first and foremost to our council. I visited with ShotSpotter on a Zoom meeting a few weeks ago, and I had the honor to have with me two of our citizens. One was Miss Trina Phillips, who is, I believe, on this Zoom tonight. The other was Delon Delafosse, and I don't know if she has had the opportunity to make it tonight. And so I believe Miss Trina Phillips might want to have a commentary after the council, but at this time, we'd like to open this up to our council and our city manager first, and then we will allow Ms. Phillips, if she has comments, to come after. Let's start with Joe. Let's start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Either to the chief or our city attorney, what's the criminal offense the city municipal, I guess, code or speaks to this when you shoot a weapon in the city limits? Is that considered a misdemeanor if it's just discharging the weapon, or is it a felony?
No,
I need some clarification.
The charge of discharging a firearm in the city limits is a misdemeanor.
Is a misdemeanor. What class?
I believe it's a Class C misdemeanor. When we have an equivalent violation in our code of ordinances as well. So there's a state law that prohibits it, and there's also a city ordinance that prohibits it.
And if and when we have incidences where we charge people and we actually have an ID made of someone discharging a weapon in the city limits, do you file both the state charge and the city, or what are you doing? Neither one?
You're only going to charge somebody with one offense for the violation. So no, we
Okay.
don't charge them with both. No, sir.
With both, okay. And if you know, what's the conviction rate on these cases here within our city?
I don't have that in. You talking about, Mayor Protem, you referring to charges of discharging a firearm in the city limits?
Correct.
I don't have that information as far as the conviction, let alone how many charges have been filed. But just understand that when we're implementing something like this, we're not looking to charge somebody with discharging a firearm in the city limits. This is more along the lines of addressing gun violence. Discharging a firearm in the city limits is going to be, shooting a can in your backyard or something to that effect. When we're actually when we're implementing a program like this, the goal is to find people who are using those firearms against other people, which then would not be discharging a firearm in the city limits. That would be aggravated assault or something higher.
Well, I understand that. I'm just talking about simply the discharging of firearms, having lived in the city, usually occurs when people walk out having drank some, and it's at 4th of July and it's New Year's Eve, and they go out to their backyard and they're discharging firearms in the back of their yard. It happens here. I mean, it's happened. But you've answered my question there. Now the gentleman, Mr. With the shots fired. You said you've been in business for 24 years, 110 cities. What's the average size of the cities that you're providing the service in right now?
So we do have some clients in your population range, but as I explained to the chief, because he asked me that question earlier today, most of our cities are a greater population because up until last year, we had a very fixed price that may have had a chilling effect on the smaller cities. That is, the price was the price. It was per square mile. That MSRP right now is $70,000, plus there are some installation costs. And we realized that smaller cities like Marque may have found that pricing model unaffordable. So in order to bring this technology to your city to protect your citizens, we've addressed a much more favorable pricing, which is we call the lower tier, that is cities under 50,000 population or under 100 sworn officers, and you qualify on both regards. And that's a much lower price, much more favorable. And that price is $49,500 per square mile with no installation costs and no training costs.
So when you say per square mile, you're saying that if sensors are placed within 1 mile of each other, then that cost is, and I'm assuming 3 sensors for our purposes, correct?
Actually, no.
No?
No, I said triangulation, and that leads you to believe that there are 3. There may be at least 3 or 4 hearing event per incident. Sometimes it's 8, 10, or 12 sensors engaged in one gunfire incident. But in order to give you the service that we promised, and that's 90% notification of external unsuppressed gunfire, in order to do that, we will probably put 20 to 25 sensors per square mile. So if you're doing a 2 square mile deployment, for example, you're looking at 40 to 50 sensors in that 2 square mile area in order for us to give you the comprehensive coverage that we guarantee by contract.
And so 2 square mile coverage would now put our pricing at about $100,000. Is that accurate?
$99,000 for 2 square miles. That's correct.
$99,000 for 2 square miles. Your exact quote was, "We give precise location," quote. And does that say you're actually giving a location to a physical address?
Actually, we put a dot on the map. Let me just go back and show you real quick what that looks like. So we will give the police department an overhead view of a dot on the map. Such as you see here. So we dispatch to the dot because we understand that shots can happen in backyards and alleys or in open fields. They don't always happen at the front door of the house. So we do correlate with your parcel map so that the officers can put this into their record keeping at that street address. But they want to go to the dot because that's where likely they're going to find evidence and a victim That's where the shooting took place. And we guarantee to be within 25 meters or 82 feet radius. But often the officers say they get out of the squad car at that location and they find spent shell casings right in the immediate area. Humans injured right in the immediate area. But our contractual guarantee, we like to promise low and deliver high. We give you a 25-meter area that we talk about as our precise location. Whereas with 911, you're 800 feet away if you get a call at all.
And in your presentation, then you also said that you're providing this information within 60 seconds to the police after the shots are fired?
That's correct. 60 seconds from trigger pull. And the only reason why it takes that long, our computer hears it right away, and the computer can generate an analysis in a matter of a few seconds. But to send that data to our incident review center to let a human being analyze it, confirm that it's gunfire, so we're not sending the police on false positives, they have to listen to the audio. They have to maybe sometimes get a peer review, listen to the audio over several seconds, and then hitting the send button. And that's why we guarantee 60 seconds, but the average is usually 30 to 45.
And two other questions. First one, under these contracts, you're much like a subscription plan. Let's call it, you refer to it as a subscription plan, like a phone service. That's on a yearly basis?
That is correct.
That's a yearly. So is there any, in a second or third year, are there reductions or any savings associated with renewing?
Well, what we can offer is, especially since we've lowered our price to bare bones for the smaller cities, if you do a multi-year agreement, we can lock in the price and you'll avoid any kind of cost of living adjustments that will absorb on our end, where for particularly the providers of the modem technology, the Verizons, AT&Ts, or T-Mobiles will be escalating their price on us. We will absorb that increase if we have a long-term contract with you.
And other cities, these installations remain stationary for the entire course of the year. Would that be accurate to say?
It would be. Many cities discuss mobility at the outset, but then once we deploy and they see the efficacy, if anything, they expand the footprint, but they don't move it. They want to continue to service those neighborhoods that were identified at high risk initially through data analysis. So they maintain coverage on the original footprint, if you will, and then consider expansions rather than relocations, because gun violence tends to be suppressed, not dispersed. Other crime, this is my personal experience as a chief, a law enforcement veteran of 38 years, we may move around property crime pretty effectively, but we don't disperse gun crime. We suppress it more than disperse it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That's all I have right now.
Thank you for those questions.
Mr. Mischich.
Mr. Teachman, Chicago was one of your first cities to deploy this, was it not?
Actually, no, Chicago came in a little bit later. They had a very small pilot they were running for a while. I joined the company 5.5 years ago, and since I joined, in fact, they were my client initially, they've grown from 3 to presently 117 square miles. So they're our largest client, but they're not our oldest.
Okay. Yeah, I remember in my employment traveling there, and when it was being trialed and tested, and then when it was deployed, one of my team members had a brother that was on the police force, and it also reduced the amount of guns. They found quite a number of illegal guns, or not, I say illegal, people that weren't allowed to possess them in the first place. Sometimes there wouldn't be somebody actually shot, but they would, for better terminology, just roust suspected individuals that were in that area, and they typically find one of the firearms. And we'd have to be okay with that, but that did help reduce it. So it's all complementary to it. But I do know that system works. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm assuming that was your time at AT&T, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mishich, are you done?
Yes, sir, I am. Yes, sir. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Robin, before we move to Casey, I believe DeLon is waiting in the waiting room to be let into the meeting. Would you check that for us, Robin?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Ma'am?
They've been admitted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But so is Trina. I believe she was on there first too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Councilwoman McCullough.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to make sure I understood the figures in the beginning. So 50,000 roughly per square mile for complete coverage, correct?
49.5, exactly. 50,000 is rounded up.
And how would and I apologize if you said this and I just missed it, but so for a city of our size, what would ShotSpotter's recommendation be? Would it be that we cover the entire city, every square mile, or is it you guys work with the city in order to identify the areas you think that would be best suited for coverage?
That's a great question. Thank you. So we're not in the business of overselling. I don't think there's a city among our 110 plus that we cover every square inch. There are a couple of cities that claim we cover every residence, but we don't have to cover open fields and so forth if there hasn't been gunfire there historically. One of the limitations of the lower tier pricing program that we put into place a year ago is, and this is from our executives, we cap off at 2 square miles. So we would look to work with your chief to identify, and we've already had some exchange on that earlier today, as to where your gun violence has been historically. And so recognizing a 2 square mile footprint, we're trying to identify with the chief's input where that would be most advantageous to serve you and the city residents.
Okay. And is it that it's like little pockets of geography all add up to a square mile? Or is it like, okay, this patch of 1 square mile is what we're going to do?
You know, looking at the data that the chief provided me today, most of your gun violence, most of your gun crime has been very heavily concentrated, and we can cover a lot of that with a 2 square mile footprint. But even 2 square miles doesn't cover all of it. It will probably take 3 to 4. But at the proposal that we're offering, at the price that we're offering, unless I get clearance from my executives, we're looking at a 2 square mile maximum, and that would cover most of your problem as we see it in the diagnostic today.
Okay. But technically, does ShotSpotter typically work where it's like, we're just going to take this 2 square mile patch, or is it a 0.5 square mile here, maybe a mile away is another 0.5 square miles?
It doesn't always have to be contiguous. It just happens that the data that I saw today shows that the footprint is going to be a contiguous 2 square miles to cover the gun crime that we saw in the data. You had a couple of events, outliers, if you will, and we could talk about growing to that if the executives on my side agree. But given that we have a 2 square mile cap, we're probably going to have a contiguous footprint in the area that the chief and I were talking about earlier today.
Okay. And then also, you know, you mentioned at the end of that speedy presentation, which I appreciate you kind of whipping through it. I know that's not easy. You mentioned ACEs and you mentioned trauma-informed care. There was sort of 4 pillars there at the end that you mentioned. And I didn't catch whether this was just something that, did ShotSpotter see themselves as, you know, in a city that's experiencing a lot of trauma because of violence, particularly because of gun violence, there are these 4 things that we sort of see as a way to ameliorate that, and ShotSpotter is one of them? Or was there something beyond that ShotSpotter sort of supports other ways to reconcile a community? I didn't really grasp.
And I apologize that my forced brevity, I only glossed over this. Let me just quickly expand on that thought. And this is not ShotSpotter. This is actually something that I put into the presentation. The company's aware of it, but it's one of my passions from when I was in law enforcement, trying to resolve the trauma that our children are exposed to. I was strong on domestic violence. I still serve on the board of directors of a YWCA. And also recognizing that gun violence in a community is traumatizing to children. So this comes right off the ACEs website. I borrowed this diagram where disrupted neurodevelopment leads to all these other issues, social, emotional, and cognitive impairment, and so forth. So what's the resolution? What I shared with the chief earlier today, you take the data from ShotSpotter, such as you see here. You cross-reference your street addresses with your student population, and you say, where are we seeing gun violence? Let me get another example. You see gun violence concentrated in these neighborhoods. You cross-reference your student population. You share this with your school officials directly from the chief to school superintendent, or in communities with an SRO program, where the SROs go to the schools and share this data and say, you have children exposed to gun violence, children exposed to trauma. Let's identify these children and give them clinical care, school psychologists, school nurses. But now we understand why little Ronnie Teachman's not performing well in school. He's got issues around ACEs. And the resolution is trauma-informed care. And we deserve, our children deserve that. We can't do it if we don't know where they are and who they are. Much like with COVID, we found that the way to address the pandemic was through data, identifying those at risk through contact tracing, taking measures so that we didn't impose on the liberties of all of our community members. And here, I think the same applies with gun violence, to identify those perpetrators and isolate and quarantine them before they continue to harm. But at the same time, recognizing we want to treat those that are afflicted with a social disease, whether it's COVID or gun violence, and children exposed need to be, I believe, need to be given the proper treatment, at least given that afforded the proper treatment they deserve.
Well, I completely agree with you. And I'm sure the rest of council and anyone else who was in that meeting, our last special called meeting with the Center for the Prevention of Violence, talked about that exact strategy was mentioned, right? The like cross-referencing of where recent gun violence episodes have occurred with who is in school, and using that network to identify kids that, like you said, it's not just hearing a gunshot. There's so much more that goes along with it.
No question.
But just to clarify, there's no further what you were trying to impart was that ShotSpotter provides that data, but there's no other further steps that ShotSpotter is taking specifically to like work with our ISD, or to, there's not more that you're offering as part of this. It's just there's a lot of valuable data here that comes out of using it. Actually,
That's not fully correct. And again, I had to cut this short because I was given 15 minutes, but I'm happy to expand momentarily. So part of the service that you would be subscribing to includes a customer success representative on behalf of a team of folks. They're a team of former law enforcement and crime analysts. And what they do is they would work with the police department to develop best practices and training. And part of that best practices training and developing a policy with the chief is to tell the officers, listen, if you have interaction with your student population, if you have interaction with your schools, whether you're an SRO or a day shift officer and you're going by the schools, take the data that you have at your fingertips, that's even on your phone, and share it with your school officials. Maybe having regular meetings with them to talk about where shootings are occurring in the neighborhoods and identify those children that are at risk, especially if you went to a home where there was a sibling shot or a family member shot, or somebody was directly exposed, or the house was shot at, there's property damage. Make sure that those police reports get communicated to your school officials, because you want to monitor these children who are exposed directly or vicariously to the trauma. So besides just simply giving alerts in real time and giving rolling up data, we have it as part of our onboarding and training program.
Okay.
We're available for consultative services, and then we would meet with the executives at least annually, kind of like you go to the doctor for a physical. But we're available 24/7, 365 to offer all these services.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to hear now what Delon and Trina had to hear or had to say.
I hope I answered your questions. Thank you very much.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCullough. I believe we have the two citizens that participated in the earlier meeting that I had with ShotSpotter. And I believe Trina was in the meeting first. And so, Ms. Phillips, if you're able to unmute yourself, if you have any comments that you would like for the council to hear about your experience and your understanding of ShotSpotter, you may do so at this time.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to share that my first experience hearing about Shot Spotter, and Delon and I both saw the same thing. It was on ABC 13 about 6:30 in the morning. Spot shotter, there was no one called about shots being fired, but Shot Spotter heard the gunfire, alerted the police. By the way, it's in South Houston. They have a 5-mile radius on theirs. And when the police got alerted, they found 3 people shot. My first thing that came to mind, Lamarck needs this. In my opinion, I think that would be great. That's about it.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Delon, can you unmute? Kyle, is Delon available?
I've asked them to unmute the 2 numbers that are in here.
Okay. Until we can find out if Delon is able to unmute or not, let me just say that I think that this is needed discussion.
Delon is here.
Okay, there you go. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Delon.
Sorry about that. I'll mute back.
No, Delon.
Yes,
Delon,
sir.
we're ready to hear from you.
Yes.
The council's ready to hear what your thoughts are.
Oh, okay. Thank you guys so much. So just want to let you all know that I'm definitely all for it. I do think that it would be to me, not only a great asset for the community, but I do think that it would definitely serve a great purpose, because by putting people on alert that we do have this system in place, and to me, it just makes sense as far as being able to detect those sounds, because a lot of us, I'm one of them, we're calling in, we're reporting the shots. Sometimes we can't tell maybe which street it's on, but I do know firsthand shots have been fired on my street several times right around the corner, where the house was a gentleman's house. It was shot up about 16 rounds. One time I called in, a gentleman got out of his vehicle and literally fired a couple, maybe about 3 rounds of shots. So I fully support it. I think that it will allow the gun, I guess I won't say gun violence, but I guess I could. I do think that it will help curb that in our city, knowing that people are aware of such a thing. And to me, it just makes sense. I do think that it's something that we need, all the way down from the community to the schools. It's something that we all can just make sure that, I'm sorry, you guys, I'm so excited, but I'm going 1,000 miles an hour, so let me slow down. But I do think as a community is what I was trying to say, by all of us knowing that it exists, and along with even like neighborhood watch, I just honestly do feel that it will curb this, because again, I've heard gunshots so many times. I've been awakened like 2, 3 in the morning having to call 911 because of that. And then the last time I called, it literally sounded like it was in front of about 3 or 4 homes away from me. And I just thought we were going to wake up and the dead body was going to be on the road. So I just fully support this.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Delon, and thank you and Trina for being on the call with me, being in the meeting as citizens, to be able to understand it from a citizen's perspective. I believe, Mr. Jackson, you have the thoughts and the will of council. I believe we ought to proceed with a workup from Chief Jackson as it relates to the miles that are in question. I believe that you have the consensus of council to look at pricing and to present those things to us officially and formally so that we would be able to consider them in our 2021-2022 fiscal year budget.
Yeah, I think we have a place to start. I think there's a couple other things we need to ask and a couple other things I need to point out to council. Mr. Teachman, you said it's limited to, it's capped at 2 miles. If council chose to expand, what would be the cost of each mile of expansion?
I don't want to sound like a car salesman, but we've been limited to 2 square miles. If we exceed that, then I don't know if the price would go to the 70 MSRP for the larger cities, or if they let us expand at the 49.5 per mile that you've been afforded, given the size of your city.
Okay, but so that answers part of my question. The other part is, if we exceeded it, then do we lose the 49.5 on the first 2 miles?
My answer would be no. That I've been given authorization to go to 2 square miles at 49.5. That shouldn't change if you exceed it.
Okay, that answers that question. And just for council's information, the 2 square miles would equate to about 14% of the total city. And I mean, we'll have to look at this a little bit more with Dara, and this is no indication of anything towards you, Mr. Teachman, but this is not the only company that provides something similar to this. So the procurement rules are going to apply to this. So we can sure look and Best Price is going to do it. I mean, that's why I'm asking the questions about the expansion and stuff, because that would all have to be considered in the procurement process for this. But yes, we will get something put together for you to look at and consider during the budget.
And I appreciate that. As I said, I've been a chief twice. I've purchased this twice. I understand sole source procurement. I understand the RFP process. I think if you look at what we provide, and I was only scratching the surface on some of these issues today, I think you find we're unique in the marketplace, especially with our 35 patents. There are those that claim to have gunshot detection. Those are usually line of sight matched with a camera. If you price out what it would cost for 2 square miles, I think you'd find our pricing attractive. But we welcome the competition. I understand you have procurement rules, and I'm respectful to those.
Thank you. So we'll get something put together, Mayor, for the budget.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Teachman, for your presentation. It was an excellent presentation. I think that we have a good starting place. Thank you, council, for your questions. Thank you, Trina and Delon, for your comment. Mr. Jackson, I believe the rest of this workshop is yours, sir.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Teachman goes, I do have one final question. Does your system also, or can it be programmed to pick up other noises such as excessive motorcycles or dirt bikes or other vehicle noises?
Great question. So the fact is the system actually does pick up all those noises, but we're in the gunshot detection business. So what we do is we dismiss those noises first to the machine classifier. And if that doesn't get dismissed, then the human is trained to dismiss anything that's not gunfire. So the only thing you're subscribing to is gunfire notification.
Thanks.
Mr. Jackson, I do think it might be prudent to look at the other competitors as we put that RFP out. Since it's dollars.
Of course. So we're by law we're required to, so we will.
Good deal. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Mr. Jackson, item 5.
Item 5A, good evening, Mayor and Council. Item 5A is discussion relating to the TERS 2 status update report. We started on this at the last council meeting, and we have some more information on that. I think we're going to start with Susie. Susie, you on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you want to go ahead?
Yes, sir. The last time we brought it to council, and I did not have a chance to speak to Ms. Cheryl Johnson regarding the report. So March 9th, we had a chance to chat with her along with Mr. Michtich. And Mr. Michtich, please correct me if I mention anything that was inaccurate regarding what Ms. Johnson was saying. Basically, what happened was this. Early part of 2019, we established the TERS for Omega Bay. Then the ordinance did not specifically say which approach, and there are 2 approaches. One is you apply the taxable value. And then you establish a base year, and anything incremental moving forward, we would allocate funding to the TERS, assuming the value would increment over time. The second approach would be using the market value. Now, the ordinance did not specifically say which approach. So therefore, by default, under the GCAT, Galveston County Appraisal District, they applied by default market value. Under the situation for the Omega Bay TERS, when you apply the market value, there was not incremental from the base year. So what Ms. Johnson was suggesting was if we can amend the ordinance to specifically saying use the taxable value approach, which would enable the TERS to get some fundings allocated to them earlier rather than later years. We're still going to collect the same dollar amount because value is a value. So taxable, basically total is the same. It's just like Darrell was saying, it's just you're going to allocate that a portion to the TERS based on incremental. Under the taxable value approach, there was an incremental. Estimated for fiscal year 2020, which would apply to 2019 tax year, roughly about $9,000. And if we don't do the amendment to the ordinance, then the TERS would not get any incremental funds based on the market value approach. Now, the tax code section 311 allows municipalities to specifically spell out which approach that we want it to be to apply for the calculations. And then, of course, the measurement date needs to be January the 1st for each tax year. And then we do need to take care of this as soon as possible this year to correct this, if council choose to do that. Of course, that's entirely up to council, but that's what the situation is at this point. So Mr. Mitchell, please jump in if Ms. Johnson said anything that was different from this.
No, ma'am, and I talked to her subsequently also, but
Okay.
yes, it just needs to be stated all values are as of January 1 each year.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to select one to be apples to apples. And the taxable value is going to be the most accurate because after all your exemptions and everything, you know, it's going to be there. Market value could go up substantially.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the actual taxable value may be quite a bit lower than that spread. And actually, if you're using a market value approach of market value to market value, you could be allocating more funds to the TERS than you should be, you know, and I want to be fair about everything. So I think that taxable value would be the best route. But we do need to get it in because she said something about July 1st is their cutoff.
Susie, just for clarification for the council, and I don't know if Ms. Johnson touched this or not, but and it would seem to me, and maybe Derek can help with this too, it would seem to me taxable value would be the only thing that the appraisal district would be able to accurately report. Market value could be, I mean, a house could be worth $300,000 to one person and $400,000 to another. So there's no way to accurately determine it. That changes day to day, but the taxable value only changes once a year. So why would they not use taxable value straight through? Because that's the number they determine. That's the number they have some input over. Why would they not use it? And where are they even getting market value numbers?
I can speak to that from what Cheryl had said. We as a city of Lamarque never gave them what the benchmark was supposed to be. And so they defaulted to a market value. So, you know, it was never put forward to them. And that's the other reason for them to put into July 1st. These reports on this were just pulled because of the request. It has, once you establish this and give them that information and what we're going to use them from here on out, they will run these reports periodically. But it was, an oversight from us as a city that it was not provided, the direction was not provided to them.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, then would it seem like it would be a fair assessment that the intent of the council at the time that they passed this ordinance was to use the taxable value?
Well, yes, sir. I mean, we had talked about that with Ms. Darcy, because that's your ending amount, and so it's your most accurate,
Well, and the reality, I mean, the reason I asked you that is because the reality for the city is the market value doesn't have anything to do with the taxes that the city is going to get off of those properties. The taxable value determines the taxes the city is going to collect. So if we're going to look at it, if there's an incremental increase that goes into the TERS, it should be based on keeping the city held harmless in that. We're saying from that point forward, if you do new development, yeah, that tax money can go to that, but we're always going to have the same piece of the pie. The city's always going to have the same piece of the pie it has right now, because that's already been built into our budget.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And Mr. Jackson, if I could speak to that, I think we're using the terms market value and taxable value a little literally. And what we're really talking about is the tax code definitions of the different types of appraisal methods. So one is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Susie, one is about assessed value and one is about collected value. Right. And so really what we're talking about here is, are we going to go off the amount collected, which takes into account all of the various exemptions? Are we going to use the assessed value, which would typically be higher?
Yeah.
And so if we were to draft an ordinance to make that change, we should be able to get that in by July 1st if that's the direction from council. It does need to go through the zone board for approval, which is not terribly difficult during these times. What we show is that it will change the base value we're dealing with. So all it does is change the proportion between the city and the TERS. So it would give the TERS more value. And then for those that are interested, it's not such a huge amount of money that it's going to change something this year as far as what the TERS board can do. But it would theoretically, if things kept going this same way as far as the exemptions and the amounts assessed, it would allow the TERS board to take action on their roads when they're legally able to a lot more quickly, than otherwise. And that's probably an incorrect statement. I'm sorry, maybe not a lot more quickly, but a little more quickly. Would you say, Susie?
Yes. I mean, you can't move too fast with that kind of money. So little by little, we're hoping cumulatively you can actually get something achieved over time inside the TERS. And that was the intent of establishing the TERS when Ms. Darcy was involved.
Does council have any questions for Susie or Dira or Tink at this time?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I do. Ms. Dira, help me out. And I agree with your analysis, by the way. That's how I was viewing it, assessed value versus, some other people call it appraised value, but assessed value and the tax value, the collected. But here's my question. This tiers, is this the only tiers in Lamarque?
I believe this is the only active TERS. We had an old TERS 1 that is not active, but yes, TERS 2 I think is the only active TERS on Lamarque.
And how was the number 1 treated in terms of this issue, if it was addressed in any way?
That was long before my time.
And me, Susie, do you have any idea?
No,
That,
sir.
that TERS number 1 is pretty old.
I don't know that did they ever even get to that stage?
The way I remembered it was that it like never even got its feet underneath it to begin
Right.
collecting.
Yeah, I don't think it ever had an increment fund.
So I ask it in the context of, are we laying a precedent here? Whatever we do here, in effect, does it become a precedent for other TERS that may be established?
So from the legal standpoint, no. And because I know you find these interesting in the Texas Tax Code, this is section 311.012. It lays out the specifics. So when the city creates a TERS, you can dictate which method of assessment is required to be used. This was, set up by a third party way back when, and they just left it blank. So each county has to pick a default method. So the county just basically picked the default method until we tell them otherwise.
And to be clear, Robert, you were saying that the taxable or the collected amount is the one that you're recommending.
Yes, sir. That's the taxable amount because, let's say even after a flood in Harvey, if we were going market to market, everybody's was still skyrocketing. You had to protest and it's brought back down. We would be penalizing ourselves as a city if we did that, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Councilwoman McCullough, do you have any questions?
No more at this point.
Okay. Susie, thank you for your work in this matter. Dear, thank you for your work in this matter. Robert, thank you for your diligence in this matter. And certainly, just very quickly, we are mindful and let us remind the community that the reason that there is a TERS 2 is because our friends and our community members, our family members over in Omega Bay have private streets, and we are unable in a meaningful way to adopt them into our street maintenance program because of various reasons. But they're still our family members, they're still our friends, they're still part of our city. And so this is an effort to help them, to help make repairs to their streets, again, because we're one city. And so I applaud you guys for working on this. I think it'll turn out tremendously, and certainly we'll keep moving this ball forward for our folks out in Omega Bay. Mr. Jackson, 5B.
Okay, 5B 1 and 2 are a couple of updates that you had all asked for at the last meeting. I sent these out to you guys this afternoon to review. So I hope you had a chance to look at them. I'm just going to real quickly discuss. We had a discussion at the last meeting about speed deterrence on some of our city streets. And we had a very confusing process for requesting speed hump installation inside the city. So we cleaned up the administrative policy and have made it very clear on how a citizen can request a speed hump and the process that they need to go through and what we would have to do for approval of that. And we've got it posted on the website. It is available for anybody to look at on the Public Works page on the website. And you can also find it in the Find It section by searching the Find It section. We are going to during the budget session this year, we'll make sure that we make this something that we talk about for council to discuss what resources they want to put into this program, and this policy takes into account engineering specifications that were given to us by street engineers, looking at where we can put them, where we can't put them, making sure that we don't that we put them in areas that are important, but at the same time, we have to remember we don't want these tearing up our fire trucks and our police cars and stuff too when they're trying to respond to emergencies. But I think this policy will address what you guys were talking about at the last meeting, or at least help us get started in addressing what you guys were talking about at the last meeting. I would ask that you guys review that. If you have any questions or comments on that, please just get them to me. And if we need to, if after you review it, if you think we missed anything in the administrative policy, just let me know, and we'll talk about it further after that.
Tink, I've got some comments on it. I've already reviewed it. And I'm going to use an example of May Street to Corbett Street. Over there behind that underwater fishing light building. One of the things when they do this I-45 expansion, it's going to even make it a little worse over there where people cutting through that neighborhood. And the speed humps are not needed particularly everywhere. But as we get growth, that's going to be an issue. And another example, let's say apartment building goes in at back end of a residential street. You may find one there. And we're not necessarily talking about a speed bump, you know, that you bolt down, but just a hump. And it doesn't have to be very defined. We have them in my neighborhood over here on our perimeter street to keep everybody from slowing down. But my problem that I see in what has been crafted is that it requires a minimum of 400 vehicles a day to pass that street. That you've just eliminated 99% of all streets in Lamarque. And I know you're concerned about liability, but I'm more concerned about some kid getting hit. And one of the biggest complaints came from a street over off of Main and then the street on Corbett. You know, the other restriction you have on there is that no speed bump or hump can be put within 250 foot of any intersection or turn. Well, Corbett and May Street have a turn. Either end, you'll never put one on that street. And most of our streets are like that. So those two restrictions kill this thing from the get-go. I do not think you should have those two in there at all. If a speed bump, yeah, I get it. You don't want it 20 foot from the stop sign, but still, if you put those in there, this thing is dead on arrival. And I totally disagree with that. That's all I've got.
Okay. Okay. So just to clarify that, those were recommendations from the traffic engineers. That's why we asked you guys to look at it, and we can sure talk about it and see, you know, I mean, that's what we want, is we want some feedback on it. We don't, we're not saying that this is, you know, this is final. We had people who are experts at this look at the stuff and tell us what they recommended, and that's what we put in. But we're more than happy to discuss some of these individual parts with council and make some adjustments with council.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the speed bump?
Mr. Tink, does Lamarque have a traffic engineer?
We have a consulting engineer who utilizes a traffic engineer to help us when we have traffic issues.
Oh, okay.
Casey?
I haven't had a chance to look up the speed bump one, so I don't have anything to say on it right now.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing this and making this a part of the discussion. Again, all of these things we've been discussing, gun shot detection, speed humps, are all part of a safer city. And certainly we will look at those items on the website, right?
Correct.
We will look at it. We encourage all of our citizens to look at it on the website and communicate with your council member, communicate with me, so that we can bring this back at a council meeting very soon to amend, adopt, and establish a policy that we will be able to get some results from as it relates to speed in our neighborhood. Tink, go ahead.
Okay, so the next item that you had asked for an update on was an update on our transparency improvement measures. So I also provided a memo to you, and I'm just going to go over some of the highlights in that memo so we can talk about that real quick. So just quickly, transparency is the principle of allowing those that are affected by administrative decisions to know about results and about the processes that led to those decisions. Transparent governance means the government officials act openly with citizens' knowledge of the decisions the officials are making. It also means that the information that is being disseminated is factual. We've been having a number of conversations lately about transparency and about what it means and about what we could do to improve it. March 2020 through February 2021 presented some of the most trying times in the history of the city of La Marque. During that time frame, the city experienced a 12-month-long disaster declaration related to COVID-19, a string of gang-related and other shootings that blanketed our city. The December 2020 officer-involved shooting and death of the subject in Winter Storm Uri, the most devastating winter storm in the century. Winter Storm Uri caused more damage to the city than any tropical storm or hurricane that anyone can remember, and involved the city of La Marque operating under 2 active disaster declarations at the same time. We also faced, obviously, numerous other challenges during that time. So from an administrative standpoint, extraordinary circumstances often and quite frequently reveal flaws, and they reveal opportunities, not just in emergency plans, but also in ordinances, policies, and rules. The events of this last year obviously pointed out some improvements that we can make. And so I'll talk to you about a few of the things that we did along the way to try to work on and we continue to do to improve transparency. Now, the first one is implementation of Internal Policy 2009, which was speaking to the press. An internal policy was adopted on December 13th of 2020 in response to staff members providing non-factual opinions to the press as city representatives. Policy provided that only approved staff members could speak to the press on official city business. Staff members in major departments that have been assigned as public information officers, they've been given those duties, and those needing additional training are being provided internal guidance until we can finish their scheduled training for professional PIO training. So we're working as quickly as we can to get them trained up so that they understand that public information officer role and what their requirements are. The Open Records Act, the city of La Marque received more open records requests in the last 12 months than the city has received in the previous 30 years. And that's obviously from some of the situations that we had during the year. A multitude of requests led to hundreds of hours of staff time and other resources being expended to try to meet them. The city had an old and archaic process for administering open records requests prior to those events. Those events revealed multiple flaws, challenges, and opportunities for improvement in that process. We've updated the process to make sure that open records requests are processed timely and properly in accordance with the Open Records Act. Some of the updates that we have implemented include what you guys did at the previous meeting, establishing a specific email address for written requests to be submitted to, ensuring that email address is properly provided on our official city website and to all of our known media contacts. We established an internal processing protocol that outlines Open Records Act responsibilities, notifies all staff members that a request has been filed, provides full information on what they're requested to provide, and provides a deadline for submittal of that information. Created some permanent folders and links for staff to use to upload all relevant information for inclusion, completion, and accuracy, so we make sure it's all getting to the same place. Streamlined our review process on that, so we make sure if we have to redact anything or take out personal information, we get it out. And ensured timely and complete responses to all open records requests. It's very important to note that not all records of the city are subject to the Open Records Act. Just as there are exceptions to the Open Meetings Act that allow certain items to be discussed in executive session due to their sensitivity, the city houses records that are legally required the same level of protection. Failure to properly protect those records opens the city up to significant liability issues. As such, we have a duty to protect those records even when citizens or reporters request them and believe they have the right to see them. In most cases, the burden of determining that protection does not fall on city staff. It falls on the Attorney General for the state of Texas. We have also streamlined that process to make sure that any record that needs to be have a determination made on it is submitted to the Attorney General timely to make sure we can get those questions answered timely as well. As we continue to see open records requests, as we continue to see requests for documents or information, we're reviewing this policy. We're going to be reviewing this policy constantly to make sure that we're following the law, to make sure that everything that needs to be provided is provided, We've already taken some steps to improve the stuff on the website. We've added some pages for some of our administrative staff members to make sure that we're having a larger and more noticeable presence on social media to try to make sure that information is getting out. We're adding to this every day. We're trying to think of new ways that we can add to this to make sure that the information that we need to get out and the information the citizens are entitled to is put out. And we're going to continue to do that, and we'll continue to make sure that information is out. But we also want to make sure that everybody understands every piece of information we have, we're not allowed to put out. We have not only liability on the part of the city, but personal liability on some of those issues as well. So when it comes to personnel, when it comes to things like that, transparency is not talking about personnel actions. We have a requirement to not put those items out in the public sphere. So we won't put those things out in the public sphere. But we have done a bunch of work on our processes, trying to make sure that we have brought everything up to date with the Open Records Act. Everything is falling in a timely manner, and everything that we're required to get out is getting out. And on the other side, the stuff that we want, the basic everyday stuff that somebody shouldn't have to be asking about on a daily basis to find out, we're trying to make sure it gets out through our social media outlets and making sure everybody knows what we're doing. So you have that memo as well. Then you also have another memo that was submitted to you by Dara that's attorney-client privilege to talk about the other stuff that you requested last time. And that's all I have on that, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Jackson as relates to his update on transparency improvement measures?
No questions for me. The memo was pretty straightforward. I agree with what I saw.
Thank you. Robert?
No, sir.
Joe?
I just want to verify that if I heard this accurately, when we have requests for open records, that we're going to respond to them in a timely fashion. Is that what I heard?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. All right.
Mr. Jackson.
Okay. Moving on to item number 5C, presentation of the juvenile curfew ordinance report for the calendar year 2020. We've got all that stuff put together now. And so Chief Jackson, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Jackson, Mayor, did you have a question first?
Ma'am?
Did you have a question first, Mayor?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. You should have in your packet the juvenile curfew report for calendar year 2020. As you know, is in compliance with Section 44-2 curfew of minors. This report is presented to council on an annual basis. It is designed to provide the council with information regarding police interactions with minors, the number of motor vehicle crashes involving minors, number of crimes involving minors, and I also included the citations report for minors as well. So this is the first annual full year report that is presented to council in compliance with the juvenile curfew ordinance. So the report is attached, it accompanies the agenda item. And so I'm just going to go over some key points of this report. And then whatever questions you have, I'll be glad to answer them. During calendar year 2020, according to our CAD system, our computer aided dispatch system, we had 131 calls involving minors. Now, that's a very broad scope, and it encompasses a variety of nature codes in the CAD system, and many of those are going to be broken down in the segments below. So, motor vehicle crashes. So during calendar year 2020, we had 80 motor vehicle crashes that involved a vehicle occupant who was 16 years of age or younger. Of those 87 vehicle crashes involved 87 vehicles. And in those 87 vehicles, there was 136 vehicle occupants. Now, that's not 136 juveniles. That's just the number of occupants in those vehicles. So of those crashes that are reported in this, during the nighttime curfew hours, there was 3 crashes, 3 motor vehicle crashes that took place between the nighttime hours that are referenced in the juvenile curfew ordinance. During in those 3 crashes, there was 5 juvenile occupants in those vehicles during the crashes. They were ages 1, 6, 10, and 12. There was two crashes involved 1-year-olds. So 1, 6, 10, and 12. The daytime curfew hours, there was 11 crashes that were reported and investigated by the police department. And in those, there were the juvenile occupants were 16. There was 2 16-year-olds, a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old. I'm sorry, a 9-year-old, and then 8 of the remaining were aged 0 to 4. Now, I'd like to go back and say that during the nighttime curfew hours, none of those occupants of those vehicles were involved in or suspected to be involved in any criminal activity. They were either with their parents or an adult family member. Crimes, the crimes that were reported and that were reported to the Marque Police Department. So of the crimes that were reported, so a victim of a crime is somebody who needs the help. A juvenile runaway report or a missing runaway report, the juvenile is considered the victim. It's not considered an offender. So 20 of the crimes that were reported were the victim was a juvenile. As far as offenders go, there was 55 reports involving 68 juvenile offenders. 4 of those crimes occurred during the nighttime restricted hours, and 3 occurred during the daytime restricted hours. I'm going to go on to the citations issued to juveniles. So according to the records that I got from the Marque Municipal Court, there were 33 citations issued to juveniles during calendar year 2020. Now, many of those citations are inclusive of the offense reports that were taken by the police department, whether it be theft or criminal mischief. Several of them were offenses that were or charges that were filed by citation associated with a crime that was reported. Now, and then one thing I do want to make sure that y'all pay attention to, there were 0 citations issued for curfew violation. So it's there, but we're not out to write tickets to juveniles for juvenile curfew violation. So there were 0 citations issued to juveniles for curfew violation offense. And the attachments for reference, as you can see, are juvenile crash involvements, juvenile victims, juvenile offenders, and the juvenile citations section of the report. The crashes report came directly out of the state's crash records system that allows us to run reports for crash data in the city. So that is a synopsis of the report, and I'm sure that council is going to have some questions on the contents.
Thank you, Chief. Casey.
I was like, I've got questions. Thank you, Chief. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you and the rest of council as well for bringing this back this month so I could have lots of time to look it over. One of my questions, Chief, I think you just answered, but I want to ask it again just so I'm super clear. So I had wondered, of the offenses that had occurred, sorry, I want to find the Chief. Where are you, Chief? I'm pinning you, Chief, so I can look at you. There you are. There were 7, right? 7 offenses or citations. I'm sorry, that took place during curfew hours. Is that the same thing? I know I'm mixing up with my notes. No, it was 7 offenses that took place during curfew hours.
There was 4 during the nighttime curfew hours and 3 during the daytime curfew hours.
Right. And were there citations issued that came out of those offenses?
I don't have that on that. I'm sorry. I don't know whether or not those specific ones resulted in citations or what. No.
Okay, but you can confirm that there was no citations issued for breaking the curfew.
Correct. There were no citations issued, and you can see that because the chart on the final pages of the report are the citation audit, and it's got the specific charge that was filed, and none of them, there were no charges filed for juvenile curfew violation.
Okay. Okay. And well, first off, I would like, there's not immediate urgency to this, but if it's possible, I would like to know if those offenses those 7 offenses did result in citations.
How about I get you the data whether they resulted in citations or criminal charges filed through a municipal court? I mean, the county system.
Sure, but we would know what they were.
Ma'am?
Would we be able to confirm what the citations were for?
I will be able to get that information to you by noon tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, like lightning. Okay, yeah, that would be great. I am curious.
Okay,
you know,
I'll get that for you.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's this one big piece of like this gap of knowledge that, you know, that we can't see through all of these reports, which the reports are very helpful, but, and this is less of a, I'm just going to point this out, and then I'd really like to know what you think and maybe what the rest of council thinks. But, you know, one thing we can't tell with these is to see how many people might have been stopped with the curfew ordinance as the reason, like as the initial reason, right? Because if it didn't result in a citation and it was determined there wasn't an offense, I'm assuming that, is there a record of that? Is there a record of if a police?
You're asking if the probable cause for the contact or the detention was because of a juvenile curfew violation?
Mm-hmm, right, because
I would really have to dig deep into the CAD data. And from what I recall, not specifically because I see somebody who looks like they're a juvenile and they're out past curfew, but I'll look deeper into that to try to get that answer for you.
Okay.
Before I say yes or no, I'll look into that.
And just for everyone else, in case you're wondering why I care about that, you know, I think for me, that's the biggest piece of knowledge that connects to, I think, one of the biggest concerns and criticisms around these curfew ordinances. And that is that it can be just another reason to stop somebody, and in the hands of someone who's not being responsible with their, you know, their position of authority, can be targeting.
If you can hear me, I think we lost your audio. Can anybody else hear her?
I can't hear it. Casey. Councilwoman McCullough.
So I got rid of my video. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, I have to deprive y'all of seeing my blue light glasses. Yeah, I mean, the data is really helpful. I really appreciate this report, and I appreciate you going through it, Chief. And for me, and, you know, council and mayor, again, like if there's a way for us to pinpoint how many people get stopped with the curfew ordinance as the reason, you know, because for me, that seems to be the biggest, that could potentially be one of the weakest spots of this. However, other than the fact that there's so many children involved as victims in more crimes than I would like, this data is really helpful, and I'm very pleased to know that nobody was cited for breaking curfew, and that there were so few citations issued during the curfew hours period. So
it'll take me longer than noon tomorrow, but I will get that for you.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Any other, thank you, Councilwoman McCollum. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions, please.
Go ahead.
Chief, if I could understand this, and maybe this will respond to some of the questions you have, Casey. I'm going to work it backwards from your last report. Under the page, the heading of citation audit juveniles, you show 33 total citations, and there's a timestamp there. And so our curfew begins at what time? On weekends, I know is different than the weekdays, as I recall, correct?
Correct. The nighttime curfew or the daytime?
The nighttime.
The nighttime curfew, midnight. I believe it's midnight.
I thought I read there's 11 on school nights. It's earlier. I need to refresh my memory. But anyway, Casey, just so that you know, I see timestamps there on that report with regard to, and I see very few of them. The only one that I kind of saw that stood out was one at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I read this accurately, I see two here for 3 o'clock in the morning as well too. And then I think I saw another one for 2 o'clock in the morning. But so just from that point, now going then to the previous report, Chief, the in your cover letter, you say that that a juvenile runaway is not a violation of criminal law. However, such an investigation does require law enforcement activity and follow-up investigation by detectives in certain situations. And yet on that report, beginning on, there's a page 1 of this, where it lists at the top, I guess the ID, incident ID, agency, and offense. I see runaway constantly listed as an offense. So if you could please explain that. If it's not a criminal, as your report says, then why is this listed as an offense?
That is a that's a coding. That's just the way the report. I mean, the incident that's being investigated.
So that's not to say that there was some sort of ticket or anything issued.
No, sir. That's just the title of the report that the officer writes up, and so we know that the title is going to be runaway. So we know that that's we do have a child or a juvenile who is a victim of an incident. It's not a criminal incident, but it still does require the investigators to follow it.
Okay, thank you. And explain, we've got theft under, well, yeah, I guess they're categories. So the shoplifting as a category would then be for something over a value of $100. Would that be accurate?
Shoplifting is theft at a retail establishment.
It's theft and
it would be the difference between stealing a bike out of a yard or going to Walgreens and stealing a bag of candy or something like that. Shoplifting is just committing theft.
Is from a retail establishment,
a business,
as opposed to the theft under $100 is the personal a personal property crime, is what you're really saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the last question I have, and this is kind of from my old time with the on the public policy side with the Children's Center and the work we did there. As I recall, and this is just simply, if you could confirm this, there's a different, we have additional incidents of juvenile crime that usually is of a nature of perhaps assaults and sexual types of sexual crimes that occur within our schools. But those are handled by the sheriff's department. Is that accurate?
If it occurs on school property, it can be investigated by the sheriff's office, correct?
And very rarely does the Lamarque PD get involved in those.
I'm not going to say very rarely, because normally that's going to be something that is, they're going to cooperate. They're going to reach out to us and get information on if a person is a resident of Lamarque, is it because of a student that lives in Lamarque?
Yes.
Then they will get with us more often.
So whose category then does that go in reporting? Does that stay with the sheriff's department, or at some point is that reflected in these reports?
No, it'll stay with the sheriff's office.
It will stay. I kind of remember that too from my JP days. Any of the truancy stuff was handled also with the sheriff's department. And it was always surprising to me during that period of time, the crimes or the incidences involving sexual assaults, things of that nature at that time. That's all I have. It's a very interesting report. I'm glad to see Lamarque is doing some about this, and I applaud the previous council here. Certainly was not something that I'm involved in, but I applaud all of you for this sort of reporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Chief Jackson, for bringing this report to us. I am interested in the same issue or the same bit of information that Casey is. I'd like to see how many of our young people were engaged during, in particular, the curfew hours. And I really want to see a large gap. I want to see a large gap between those that were engaged in the curfew hours and those that were cited during those hours, because that would say to me that we are doing more protecting of our children than any type of prosecuting of our children. And I believe, as Councilwoman McCullough, we've both said this at various times in our commentary, I believe that if we have a curfew ordinance, it should be designed to protect our children from danger and not prosecute them. So I would like to see a lot more interactions with our young people in ratio to citations that have been given to our young people. I'll leave it at that. Again, thank you for the report, Chief. We'll move on to item 5B, Mr. Jackson.
Mayor, Council, next we have a quarterly report update from Stifel with Mr. Brad Angst, and he's on, so Brad, go right ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. Thanks for having me. I'm Brad Angst with Stifel. Got my colleague David Webb with me on the line as well by phone. Together we serve as financial advisor and municipal advisor to the city of Lamarque. What that means is we help monitor the municipal bond market for you, the different fluctuations in the financial markets, and help keep you in compliance and regulation within your debt portfolio. So I have a quick little update. As part of our engagement with you, we've committed to provide a quarterly market update. It should be pretty brief, but just wanted to keep you all in the loop and let you know some things we are looking at. So I'm going to share my screen here just a moment. Great. Well, as I said, this should be pretty brief. I have just a few items I wanted to highlight for you. First and foremost, we're still at near all-time lows for interest rates and bond rates that occurred in the August timeframe when we hit the low we're just about 35 basis points off that low mark now. So that equates to just, 0.35%. And so this bottom chart, I think, really tells a good story. The blue bars here represent the last 10 years of interest rates and the fluctuation that they've had. So the top of the bar would be the high mark. The bottom of the bar would be the low mark. And so that low mark, as I mentioned, was in August. Today, we stand at the blue line, which is just below that orange line, which was the yearly high. So a lot of demand out there still, a lot of investors looking to get involved with city projects, and so the market is still there for that. Got a little bit of historical information here as well as some of the credit spreads up here between your 2-year type borrowing rate versus a 3-year. So moving along here, a couple more slides here, looking at the difference between tax exempt and taxable interest rates. Of course, the city has the option of tapping into tax exempt interest rates. And we show the difference here in just those spreads between the taxable and the municipal rate. So U.S. Treasuries here, we had a crossover that occurred in late November. U.S. Treasuries have climbed higher than the municipal market, which is denoted here in green. And what that is providing, again, is another opportunity for investors to invest. A lot of people are expecting the income tax on a federal level to be increased. And so they're starting to put their money into the municipal bond market. Of course, when you invest in tax exempt bonds, those capital gains and those investments are tax-free to the investors. So some advantages there as well. Moving on to my next slide here. I mentioned taxable cities, counties, school districts also have the access to the taxable market should they choose. That's typically when you're working on a project, maybe that's more in tune with economic development or a non-public use type project. Again, looking at some of the current rates here on treasuries, about 1% on 5 years, and then out 30 years, 2.35%. So still a very low rate environment compared to historical norms, and also compared to the historic lows just a few months back. Mentioned some of the supply demand items earlier. This is something we keep a track of, and how much supply of bonds is going into the market on a weekly basis. Currently, that average is about 8.2 billion. That's well in line with last year, which is up kind of a little bit from 2019. So a lot of projects got pushed back and have been some communities are taking advantage of that here with the very low interest rate environment. I talked about the bond fund and the inflows. This is investors that are putting money into municipal bond funds. And so when you see these positive bars, or these bars that go to the upside, those are inflows of money. We've only seen one outflow of funds in 1 week this year. Mentioned taxable issuance. We've seen those increase quite a bit here as of late. That's because of some advantages in low interest rates that are allowed there. It's also due to some federal regulations and rules that took away the opportunity to refinance bonds on an early basis. You have to wait until those actually become prepayable now, or you get to that call date, is what we refer to. And finally here, just a quick little update on forecasts. We do have in-house economists and also look around our industry at some of the interest rate forecasts. These are the current rates here in this left-hand column of the top right table. And you'll see over the next couple of quarters, it really does not have a whole lot of movement that's expected. The 30-year ticks up a little bit. We see a little bit of an increase in the 10-year. But really the consensus right now going all the way through Q1 22 is a continued low interest rate environment. So with that, that's all we have for you tonight. I will mention we did evaluate, as we always do, and monitor your current debt portfolio for opportunities to save some funds and save some monies. And at this time, there's no benefit in doing any of those. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or with that, happy to in the presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do have I don't know if it's so much a question, but Mr. Stifel, are you keeping track with what our legislature is doing right now?
We do. We get updates with some of the legislative updates.
And there's, and this is from the Texas Municipal League. I've been reviewing this. It looks like it's got some traction. There's a House Bill 35 that will impact our ability to take on additional debt via bonds, if and when that becomes necessary. Not that I'm saying that, but I'm just making the comment that there is some pending legislation that is now the subject matter of some committee hearings on the House side with regard to the issuance of bonds or tax increases. But one of the more interesting comments that's in the first line here, if I'm reading this if I understand this as I'm reading this, it provides that an election held by a political subdivision to authorize the issuance of bonds for a tax increase has no effect regarding the issuance of the bonds or the tax increase unless more than 25% of the registered voters of the political subdivision whose registrations are effective on the date of the governing body of the political subdivision adopts the election order, vote in the election. Mr. Juris, do you hear that? Huh?
I'm aware of that one. It could limit the city's ability to finance or to go to the public and ask for approval of projects if you don't get those marks. We do have some people in session that provide us reports. I don't have a whole lot of detail on that one in particular, but I'm aware of it. We'd be happy to send along some additional legislative updates if that's something you're interested in, sir.
And the other thing is that they're asking that all bond elections, any election regarding the issuance of bonds or other debt shall be on the November uniform election date as well. So just I thought those are interesting as on your particular report. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions, Council? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson, let's move to item number 6.
Item number 6A, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2021-0004, amending City Code Section 2.9, establishing a policy for appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, and assigning the mayor to the Marque Economic Development Corporation Board as an ex officio non-voting member. Mayor, Council, we have the most updated version of the document based on that includes all the comments that we heard last time from you guys. I kind of think maybe on this one, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to specifically discuss anything tonight, but I kind of think maybe on this one, because we brought it back so many times and everybody has some varying opinions or comments about different parts of it, that maybe our best method of actually moving this forward would be to have each one of you submit to look at the final version or the version we have here, submit to us written specific comments about certain lines in there, and then we can incorporate all that in there color coded for the next meeting, and then you guys can go through each item one by one and make a decision on each item. I mean, I think we could finally get some progress that way if we did. It's probably gonna be these, we'll just color code, each council member will have a color, we'll put your comments in, and then you guys can go through the specific areas one by one and make a decision. So the floor is yours to discuss it.
I support that idea for sure.
Okay. As we get into this discussion, these questions that I'm sure we have, please let the council know and let those that are listening know. There are certain items in this ordinance that are still in the drafted ordinance, the drafted ordinance in our packet and in the information that people can see, but they're yellow, and people are complaining that we said that we were going to take them out, but they're still there. Can you help explain that, please?
Yes, we highlighted those, I think, after the first iteration, because there were things that some of the council members had said they wanted taken out, some had not. So we didn't just take them out because there was not a vote or a consensus to take them out, but we highlighted them as items that there was not agreement on. So anything that's in there that's highlighted, there was not total agreement on it, so it's highlighted for further discussion. Does that make sense?
No, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tink, explain. Robert is having some heartburn over it. Members in the community are.
I thought we were real clear last meeting about the term limits.
Well, we have one council member that did not agree with that, so that's why it's still highlighted until there's a vote on it. We're not going to take it out until there's a vote on it because we're keeping it so that everybody remembers what it was. That's why they're highlighted. Okay. Until there's a majority of council that says they want it taken out, we left it in there until that point. And the rest of the stuff, we've made changes based on a bunch of comments and questions and whatever, and kept all those underlined in red, because those are things that have come up since. Those are new things that would be added or changes to existing stuff in there. That's why they're highlighted as changes. Things that there's been discussion about removing, but we have not voted on yet, then those things are highlighted. Does that make better sense?
Sort of. I think we'll have to have a special meeting called. I do have some still issues about the residency I'd like to talk about that's in this right now. And I do believe that where it states the city council or the city manager, and this is paragraph D on the third page, where it says city council or city manager upon receipt of written complaint may require a committee member to provide proof of residency. I really think that we should strike the city manager, and that's with any city manager, and leave that strictly as city council. It doesn't matter how they receive the complaint, but once it's been received to the city council, those decisions should be the city council alone and no one else. And I believe that it may even add that council may require a third-party investigation, because it's a little ambiguous the way it's been written here, whether or not you accept one or multiple things. I can tell you voter registration doesn't prove anything. We have people who have abused the policy that has been accepted by the state. The home is where you hang the hat thing. It was kind of crafted and allowed to happen for people who had multiple residences across multiple states or within the same city. Not necessarily just to change your voter registration to another address just so that you can vote in a different election. To me, that's abusing that law. And we have that right now. And that needs to, that's something separate, but that should not That's not the only thing that can prove residency. And the same with utility bills when owners of property rent their properties and they're paying the utilities. So we have to be clear that not just one of those can suffice as proof. And that's why I say it should be up to council, and there are third-party cheap enough sites that can verify all of those aspects to determine somebody's true residency. And I think that ought to be put in there. But I wanted to say that tonight because this thing has to be corrected. There is abuse, and with it, if we allow this to continue, it's deception. People believe that our appointees are residents, and a deception is a lie. And if somebody's willing to lie about one thing, what else are they willing to lie about? So we need to have this sooner than later. And Joe, I do like all of your additions. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or any clarifying points?
Mr. Mayor, I just a couple of, by the way, Mr. Jackson, we're trying to save you. We don't want this shot spotter system going off around, right? If you're listed as one of the arbitrators here. So,
well, no, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Last time you asked for that to be added in, though, so that's why she added it in.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I think I love your suggestion. By the way, I think that yeah, we're going to need to. The only comment besides follow up, I didn't see in this ordinance the part about that specifically includes and names the mayor as a ex officio member of the Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can answer that. It's actually in the agenda item itself.
Just as it's listed.
Right. So all you'd have to do is once you appoint the mayor, then he would become the ex officio member.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be in the ordinance for that to be accurate. Originally, it was so that it could be done without a second reading. You could just vote him in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Casey, did you have anything?
I just want to say that, I think it's pretty clear that there needs to be a little bit more time spent with everybody's thoughts written out. Clearly, I like the suggestion that the city manager posited at the start that, everyone send in their notes. And I saw that Joe sent in his notes to all of us, shortly before our meeting today, and I haven't had a chance to look at them, but I think that would be a good way for us to move forward rather than kind of circle round and round during a council workshop. And it might turn into we need another special meeting, but I think that if we all go through what's in there now and if we understand what the different color codes are, I think that was another good thing to clear up, Mayor. Then we can move forward, send our notes over. If we can all get our notes over in the next week or two, then they can easily collate them for the next meeting. And the last thing I'll just say is I'm a little confused about some of this kind of talk and assertions about there being deception going on right now. I think we should be really careful about how we speak about, speak in vague terms about people breaking the rules and there being, it feels kind of icky to me for us to be making assertions and not naming people and not having any mechanism for us as a council to have come to those conclusions, which I get is what we're working towards. Like there's concerns clearly in the community. And as has been stated by council members several times, there's concerns held by council members. But I just want to remind us that, we are not a judge and jury. And I just want us to move forward with clearing up this writing instead of talking about people who currently sit on boards and commissions. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Casey. Let's do this. Today is Monday. Would it be possible for us to have our additions and deletions to Mr. Jackson by Friday close of business?
I can do that.
Understanding that close
Is at 12 noon, because we have half days on Friday. Would that be doable, Council?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
So let's also understand our additions and our subtractions.
You're muted, Mayor.
Mr. Jackson is saying to us.
Unclear on some of the things that he is supposed to remove from the ordinance. So let's send additions and subtractions by Friday at noon. Having said that, there was an agenda item that Mr. Loftus wanted to address, and this is that agenda item. Mr. Loftus, are you still with us? Mr. Loftus.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just before Richard speaks, Richard, I just want to echo Casey's comment to Mr. Richard that we're not here to accuse anybody of anything right now. If you have concerns and we're trying to work, I just think that that's important also on this side.
Sure, that's understood. I see Mr. Loftus is still with us, so he understands that, I'm sure. If not, certainly as the chair, we'll remind him of that. And that's very good, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Loftus, are you still available?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, we are at the agenda item that you had some concerns about, the appointment of members to boards and commissions. And so you had some issues with residency. And so here's your chance to speak to council about your concern.
Pretty much known fact, I've been out vocal about the candidate, and I personally know for a fact that she doesn't live in the city, and I've done a lot of research about it. In fact, I've known her for pretty much her entire life, my entire life. I've known her whole family. So that is why I'm speaking out about it, because the things I know are factual, not some assertions or assumptions that one may think that I'm just making some things up. So I want it to be known and to be very clear that I'm not being slanderous or, causing mess or confusion, because these are things that will set the city back when we allow people to come into our city and, fraudulently get on boards and commissions, and more importantly, city council, and, make decisions for the real citizens of this town that don't or will not affect them when they go back to their real homes and such. So I want it to be known that you guys as a council need to put in place more strenuous, rules and requirements, and do more diligence work when a person is applying for these positions or attempting to run for a city council or for mayor even, or something of that more so importance. Also too, it's also a perjury offense that one puts themselves in when they does such a thing. And so in the event that this election goes and she's happens to win this election, it puts the city in a position to where myself, I'm just going to let you know that I'll be leading a recall effort. Whether it's successful or not, that is going to be my first mission to go out to the voters and let them know that we got in my opinion, a fraudulent candidate sitting on city council, because she does not live at 202 Bayou. I can guarantee that.
Mr.
So
Loftus,
that's what I'm going to say to that.
Mr. Loftus,
Yes, sir.
help us. Let's look forward. Help us to understand what a policy would look like, so that we can stay away from some things that might make the council uncomfortable. Let's look at how can we make the policy better.
And Mayor, do you mind if I address the candidate issue so we can narrow this?
If you feel the legal ability to do so, I would love for you to do that.
I can certainly do that. So, Mr. Loftus, just to be clear, so what's required of candidates is set by state law. The city is limited on what we can do there. So the ordinance at issue has nothing to do with candidates for elected office, and it can't. That's all I have.
Madam City Attorney, I have to disagree with that. Whatever we put into a board and commission appointment can be construed by the state as we are allowing something for this, it would then be allowed for that. Don't try to cover that. Thank you for your input.
Mr. Loftus.
So whatever my thing is, whatever this council needs to do to make sure that something of this nature doesn't happen again, that is what you guys need to do. So I'll look at it like this. What would stop, say, a big corporation or someone of that nature from coming into this city, setting up shop in a home, putting somebody in there that they want to potentially get on council or become the mayor of this city, set them up in this community, maybe 2 or 3 of them if that's the case, and they all get elected to council, and now none of them really have a tie to this community other than the fact that they want to come in and basically take over and rewrite the rules of this town. Now the small man like myself and other citizens, and some of you guys live here in the city too, we don't even have a voice in this city anymore. So we definitely need to do something about that. You can allude to what state law says and this and that, which I've been doing a lot of research on that. And basically the state law, from what I've only seen, basically says that the person has to be a resident of the city for 1 year. You can't, that's the one part that I read that perhaps can't be changed. Now, anything else is perhaps up to the city to put in place, so a person can't just say, I rented this house and I live there, and go home to another city or little town. So that's just my biggest issue with the whole thing right now. And I have an issue with it.
I understand that. I'm glad you had the opportunity to tell the entire council that. Certainly now everyone knows that there are some issues with the way that we allow people to serve in whatever capacity. Certainly this is about boards and commissions, but we know that these items somehow all are associated together. I want to be clear, Mr. Loftus, when I said I want to steer this away from things that will make council uncomfortable. I'm saying that because as a council, we can't say anything about any of these candidates that are running for office that would impact them in any way. And so that's why I'm saying let's move away so that this does not become uncomfortable, because we have an obligation not to make ourselves in an official capacity in any way impactful of any of the voters and the processes they're pursuing during this election. I want to be clear. That's what I'm talking about when I say steer it away. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to just respond to as it relates to Mr. Loftus. If not, we'll move to the next part of our workshop.
You know, Mayor, one other point there, those requirements are established in the charter. The citizens established that charter, and the requirements for the elected officer established in the charter. So those requirements that you're talking about are already there. So it's not just what's in ordinances, and you can't write an ordinance that is contrary to the charter because the citizens voted on the charter as well. I mean, we can have discussions about what people's opinions are about what's in state law, but the reality is we cannot write an ordinance that we can write and adopt an ordinance that's contrary to state law, and we're going to lose a legal challenge to it. And there's more resources gone that we could have used to do something else. So you know, we're doing the best we can with this ordinance to get you what you guys asked for in the ordinance. The ordinance applies to boards and commissions, and we're going to make sure we get that ordinance the way we want it in a manner that meets what you guys want to put in it and provides the things that you want to put in there. But if we put anything in that ordinance that is contrary to state law, it is subject to being challenged. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. We can put whatever we want in them, but then we got to pay to defend it. And if it's something we know is contrary to state law, then we just wasted resources.
So thank you for that, Mr. Jackson. Certainly the agenda for right now is to craft and adopt an ordinance for our boards and commissions that will be a reflection of what our community desires. And then we'll move to what we can do to strengthen other parts of our process, the electoral process being one of them. And so we hear you definitely, Mr. Loftus. We understand where you're coming from. This council is working on the boards and commissions now. And certainly after this election is over, the council will have a retreat with Mr. Jackson, and we'll move forward on the other areas of our government that we can improve, elections being certainly a topic of discussion. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jackson.
Item number 7A, discussion related to adopting ordinance number O-2021-0006, changing the zoning district from R1 single family residential to R2 two-family residential, lots 13 and 14, Winslow Addition, Abstract 150, located near the end of Briar Lane, Lamarck, Texas. And Dara, it's all yours.
So putting on the development services hat, there was a request from a developer. You've got a little bit of information about the developer in your packet. He had asked to change from R1 to R2. It's still a residential zone. They are changing the two lots. They will still have to go through plating, through building plan approval, etc. They've already gone through the zoning, planning and zoning commission and been recommended for approval to R2. For anybody who's aware of the history of P&Z, it's pretty unusual for them to approve an R2 zone change. So apparently they were pretty happy with this site plan and developer. It's also gone through the Board of Adjustment and was granted a variance to allow the lot to be 100 feet in length instead of 120 feet. The lot is a lot wider, so it's still meeting the minimum size required. Any questions for me on this? I don't see the developer on here tonight.
Impact fees. Since this is in essence a duplex, or the way the home looked like on there, are there going to be two impact fees charged to this? Is that correct?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be required to pay the additional impact fees. And they will pay for two connections, not one.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Mr. This is just an observation, and I don't know, Mr. King, maybe the Lamarck hasn't done it this way, but when I look at these changes, and in my past life, I had to get involved with this with some franchisees in cities where we had very, very strong zoning ordinances. I always, in some of the cities, I was impressed with a statement by the police department. It was included in this with regard to any possibility or statements that that this particular change, it was anticipated. There are no promises made, but a change would not cause any additional crime problems in the neighborhood and things of that nature. And I guess I really talking to when I see these with regard to some of the recent little commercial properties along Texas Avenue that I've seen. But is there ever any in this process of analysis with our different commissions, is there ever any attention given to any input from the police department, whether they see any risks? I just want to feel good about these. I want to feel good about this developer as well too. Is this a developer? He seems to have a beautiful package of information here, but is this a developer that is going out and buying like tax foreclosed property and then turning it around? I don't know the background of it.
So that's not something we would typically ask a developer. That'd have to be a request for the applicant to answer. To my knowledge, no, that's not the case. I think these are just 2 vacant lots. I'm not aware of them going through tax foreclosure, at least not recently. Developer does seem to have some history of developing these types of lots. But as I think maybe discussed prior to you coming on board with council, when staff puts forth a zone change, we're not recommending one way or the other. To your earlier question, as far as the PD being asked for analysis, typically that's not an analysis that goes into a zoning request, but I see why it might be relevant here in Lamarque. So we'll see what we can do. It might be better that we just kind of incorporate circulating the zoning ordinance through them so that if they have any objections, they can let us know. We do at this point involve a lot of other city departments to try to make sure early in the process in our pre-development meetings that we do address any concerns. So I'll take some steps to try to incorporate the police department into the zoning change meetings more often.
And just a comment here, I thought it was interesting, once again, this developer's vision page, that he talks about, and I'm familiar with these townhouses in Galveston on 10th Street, but he talks about them, that he developed those for the luxury market. And then the next line, he talks about being involved in affordable housing programs. Now, this home is intended to be market value, correct? It's not is there any information on that?
So that also wouldn't be part of a zoning analysis. I do know that one justification given before the zoning commission was that they could sell the houses at lower prices by getting the R2 zoning designation as opposed to just the R1. So that may be where the affordable housing designation is coming from.
Thank you. Well, I'm actually going to defer to my fellow council members on guidance on this. I just kind of, once again, I'm the newer person here, and I think you guys have great experience here on that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
None for me at this time.
Mr. Jackson, 7B.
Item number 7B, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2021-0007, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for various fund expenditures by decreasing various fund balances and increasing certain expenditures to individual budget accounts in various funds and increasing certain revenues in various funds as set forth in Exhibit A. Susie.
Yes, sir. As part of year end, every year before the audit, it's done, we do a batch budget amendment to appropriate different accounts that we have done some purchases approved by council throughout the year. As you know, council adopts the budget in September going into the new fiscal year. And then that was all based on projected events. Then we get into the new fiscal year and we have different events that can occur that may be something that we did not include in the budget process before we adopt it. So these are the things that we just need to appropriate the money to satisfy the budgeting requirement for the audit. All these items have been approved by council one way or another at some point in time. For example, like the 2020 bonds, council did approve those, and then the projects, and council did approve the contractor for the bond projects during the year. Then the TERS, setting up a new fund for the TERS, that was done by the ordinance when we set up the new TERS for Omega Bay. So all of these are just mainly for budgeting requirement to appropriate the money. And this is part of gearing in for the audit. It's just a process that we do every single year. If council has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any of the items. Now, at the time, the old fiscal year, we were under the old procurement policy. That was at the threshold of $25,000. So all of the ones above $25,000 already had been approved by council during the year. Again, we're just doing this to appropriate the money for budgeting requirement purposes, so we can complete the audit. And that's
Very
why
good.
this is for fiscal year 2020.
Very good, Ms. Koo. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Koo? Hearing none. I think you're good, Susie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
Item number 6C, discussion relating to a request for sponsorship of the Big Crawfish Bash for 2021. And we have Chase listed on here. I don't know if Chase wants to talk about it. Colleen, Mr. Quentin is still sitting there. He's still awake. He's made it this far. We probably ought to let him talk. Well, Quentin, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Anyway, I'm Quentin Severin. We started the Big Ass Crawfish Bash in 2016 at the big one at the Highland Bayou Park. We had about 8,500 people. And since then, we've been at the dog track. We get between 12 and 15,000 people to the city of Marque every year. It's 2017. We got the Guinness World Record for 58,000 pounds of crawfish. And we've been able to donate over $400,000 to charity, and we brought millions of dollars to the city. We're planning on staying in the Marque. We're going to be doing two other places. One's going to be in Beaumont area, and the other is going to be in Lake Charles. We're asking for the donation, and a lot of it's going to go back to the city. I know there's $5,000 worth of project that's going to be going back to the park, and we want to be part of that, so that was going to be a part of our donation. And Kidfish, whether we get this or not, we're going to give $1,000 Kidfish. Our organization gives to children, disabled, and veterans, and we've given over $200,000 to Camp Hope and the Education Foundations and Special Olympics. And this year we're going to be giving to our rescue. It's Operation Underground Railroad Rescue, and that is it's a child trafficking organization that actually goes and rescues kids all around the world. So if y'all have any questions, I'm trying to keep it a little short. I've been working hard today.
Does anybody have any questions for Quentin?
Quentin, hi, this is Casey, Councilwoman McAuliffe. Just out of my curiosity, where can somebody find like the record of y'all's charitable giving since it started? You know, I will
You go to IRS and you can find every bit of it. We have to
right
every year.
I don't want to go to the IRS and look it up that way. I mean,
You can
do
go
y'all
to
like have a, you know,
go to our
any kind of-
website. You can go to our website. Majority of it's updated for go to the sponsor page, and it shows what we've given year to year from 2015. We started out. We didn't even know what we were doing, and we made $1,500 or $4,500 and gave that to the Education Foundation in Santa Fe and Special Olympics. And then since then, every year we give $5,000 to education foundations that help us for volunteers, and we give Special Olympics $5,000 every year since then. And the rest of it, most of the rest of it goes to Camp Hope. Goes to CERT. We let them do our parking every year. They do a great job for our parking, and we give them 20%. This year we're not going to be able to. That's another expense we're not going to actually have this year. We're not charging for parking because we don't know how it is. We're going to try to keep 45 cleared. Every year we shut down 45 usually, and hopefully we can kind of get the cars moving and get people parked, and not going to charge for that this year. But we still are going to give it a cert. So
Okay. Well, thanks. That's all I needed to know. Appreciate it.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, the traffic. Is there a backup plan with regard to the parking? In the past, you've used shuttles, as I recall, correct?
We will have shuttles. We usually use the Mall of Mainland. This year we're gonna try to find something closer because Mall of Mainland's across from the dog track. This year we're gonna try to find something that can do a U-turn and get right there and not have a huge wait to get in. We're going to use the back road into the park for Ubers and drop-offs, and so that kind of can be kept clear. But yes, we will have shuttle. We spend, I think it's going to be $7,600 just on shuttle. So,
right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Robert, do you have anything?
I will say this, I've enjoyed it every year. I just had cooked 62 pounds here for 14 people on Easter, and we polished it all off. So, but regrettably, I'm going to be at my grandson's graduation this year, and I won't be able to attend, but I'll be there in spirit. And
well, thank you.
All the best.
Good deal.
Also, another thing, we allow any charities that help kids or disabled or veterans to come out and have a booth for free. So if you know of any in Marque or in the surrounding areas, make sure they know that we'll give a 10x10 area for free to let them come out and give out cards, or they can sell shirts. They can do whatever they want out there. We just allow that to happen. We also have a VIP veteran tent and a special needs veteran tent, special needs VIP tent. They're both 40 by 60, and we put them right pretty much in front of the stage. We have door prizes for all the veterans, and we also do that for the special needs. We started a couple different things. There'll be skydivers. We started last year, and so with our opening prayer, we usually do "Proud to be American." We have the skydivers come down, and we also do a lighting of the pot for the Special Olympics athletes.
Good deal. Good deal. Just that last part alone, Quentin, the idea that our community members that serve young people could have a free booth, to me is worth any contribution that we're going to deliberate tonight as it relates to this festival. So I think it's a great idea. I appreciate you keeping it in Lamarck, and I appreciate, more importantly, all the work that you do for our veterans and for our young people. It's needed on both fronts, and so I commend you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, Council, just want to add real quick on this. Because of COVID in the budget this year, we did not budget any of those line items for sponsorships or for Bayou Fest. So this would require a budget amendment. And this can be funded from the hot tax fund. This is a qualifying event for hot taxes.
Hot tax being hotel motel tax, being designated for tourism and city promotion.
Correct.
Just so that we're all on the same page. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin. Item number 6D, discussion relating to ratifying the city manager approval of expenditures to Android Construction LLC for costs involved in emergency distribution system water rehabilitation caused by Winter Storm Uri in the amount of $202,106.28. Mr. Carey.
Hey, good evening, everyone. First of all, I've had some technical issues. I've dropped off this meeting a couple of times, so I apologize if I have any going forward. To answer your question, Mr. Jackson, I don't have too much more to add to this item. We all know how devastating this winter storm was to our state, and more importantly, our city's infrastructure. I mean, we are still working on lines that were affected by Winter Storm Uri. So if y'all have any questions, I'm more than welcome to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chase. Does anybody have any questions for Chase as it relates to this line item? Well, hearing none, Chase, we'll move on to item 7E, Mr. Jackson.
6E, discussion related to the potential expansion of the SBA hub zone in Lamarque, Texas. Mr. Getty.
Good evening. I just had to switch to my cell. I'm not sure what happened, but I got booted out and I could not reestablish connection. So the goal of this effort is to create opportunities for Lamarque businesses that currently don't exist. We do have a small portion of our city, east of Oak, east of Highway 3, that is in an SBA hub zone. Working with Choice Analytical, Ramsey Morgan, he's a new business in Lamarque, in the Lamarque downtown, and just completed a really nice renovation. And we were talking one day, and he knew that he was in the opportunity zone and also assumed he was in the SBA hub zone. Once it was determined that he was not, we started looking at different opportunities and options and looking at the process. And just so happens that there was a direct final rule, which you have in your packet, that gave an opportunity for state governors once a year to petition for an expansion of the SBA hub zone. So also in your packet, what you have is some of the background information about what the qualifiers are, and it shows that we meet, by far meet the criteria in our potential zone 1 that you have the stats for there. Essentially, that zone is the opportunity zone with a couple of additions. But ultimately, we believe that it is going to be very beneficial to some businesses in Lamarque, and we certainly would like to move forward if council believes that that's a good move for us to do that. I think I can't see now, but Mr. Morgan was on the call as well. But I'll just stop there. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those for council.
Thank you, Alex. Does council have any questions for Alex?
Yes, sir, Alex. I'm looking at these things. I agree with it. I think it's a very good move. Y'all still have, when you submit this, you're going to have meets and bounds defined in writing, that would correlate with these maps that you gave us. Is that correct?
What's interesting about this whole process, it's relatively new. The opportunity just started shortly before COVID, so November of 19, and no one has applied for this yet. So we're working with the Office of the Governor. No city has approached the governor's office yet with an expansion. So we've asked for clarifying questions just like that. What all do we need to provide? And so we're still trying to put that together. We've been putting together what we know we need, support letters from other Lamarck businesses. We've done that. Ultimately, if council wants to move forward, I'll prepare a draft letter and get it to Mr. Jackson, and we can get it to final form for Mayor Bell. And then whatever else they say that we need, but we're currently working with them back and forth for them to establish what all we need to send to them. And we're putting together a portfolio of information right now.
Okay. Do you know if once you submit it, can it be modified?
I don't know. What I would prefer to do is just make one submittal, because the governor is only going to petition or able to petition once a year. So this is more than likely the petition won't actually go until early 2022. Do you have a concern or specific area you would like to?
I do, because I want this to succeed for the city. But when you do the meets and bounds, I was looking at it, the Omega Bay subdivision is not included at this time in that map. And I think that's the best way to leave that, because if we can't modify it or something, I would not want a future problem to knock the city out. And so
No.
On that, I feel in transparency that I need to let this council and administration know that there is strong consideration by the Omega Bay subdivision residents about proceeding with de-annexation. And if that were to happen and this were included and a judge ruled in favor of that de-annexation, that could impact this hub. So I'm just making that notice at this point in time. I'm not endorsing or negating in either way. It's just something that is very strongly being looked at. Thank you, Alex.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Alex? Alex, just really quickly, and I mean really quickly, there's an opportunity here in this for historically underutilized businesses that fall into this this geographical area, this proposed geographical area, for them to have a streamline to monies for contracts for goods and services from the federal government that are earmarked specifically for historically underutilized businesses. Would you say that was an accurate statement?
Yeah, for certified hub vendors. And so there is a process you have to, just because you're in a hub zone doesn't mean you're going to be a certified hub vendor. And so there's really 4 main criteria for that. But yes, you're correct. More to your point, there are set aside contracts worth billions of dollars. They're not even able to fulfill all those set aside contracts because there's not enough vendors for these specific pieces, as I understand. I'm sure there's a lot of competition for some, but some may not even be filled. So there's definitely dollars out there for our businesses to qualify for. But more specifically on the qualifications, there's just 4. And one of them is pretty interesting and unique. At least 35% of the business's employees have to live in a hub zone. They don't have to live in this particular one, but they must live in a hub zone. They must be a small business as defined by their NAICS code. And then there's a couple of other criteria. But once we are able to successfully get our hub zone expanded, then we will engage more with businesses and educate on what they might be able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. Thank you. Just want to make that point to us, to the council, as we deliberate on this. Any other questions? Mr. Jackson.
Mayor, council, last item number 6F, discussion relating to adopting resolution R-2021-0009 to deny Texas New Mexico Power's electric rate increase request for the maximum period allowed by the law. Ms. Purnell.
So as you can see from the Lloyd Gosling memo that was provided, this is just the standard denial of rate increase that is requested of cities. You know, and then we always go through the rate cases on it. If you have specific questions, we have enough time. I can get you detailed answers from Lloyd Gosling before it has to be passed.
Thank you, Dira. Council, do we have any questions for Dira as it relates to item, I have 7F on my workshop agenda? Hearing none, I think that's it for our workshop. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn workshop.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have adjourned our 6 p.m. workshop, and we are now entering into our regularly scheduled meeting. The City of Lamarque City Council agenda of April 12, 2021. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarque will conduct a regular meeting via telephone, video conference hosted through Zoom as provided in the attached notice on Monday, April 12, 2021 at 6 p.m. beginning immediately after the council workshop, but no later than 7 p.m. We are late, I'm sorry. For the purpose of considering the following agenda. Item 1, we are calling this meeting to order. Item 2, show all seated members of council are present. Item 3, proclamation. Three A, proclamation for Child Abuse and Prevention Awareness Month. Office of the Mayor of the City of Lamarque proclamation, whereas the children are the embodiment of innocence and hope for the future, and every child deserves to grow up in a nurturing environment free from harm and fear. And whereas, sadly, however, nearly 200,000 children in Texas are reported as abused or neglected every year. And whereas it is a problem we must relentlessly combat through awareness, education, and action. And whereas child abuse prevention is a community responsibility and finding solution depends on involvement among all people. And whereas communities must make every effort to promote programs that benefit children and their families. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because partnership among agencies, schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, and business community. And now, therefore, we the mayor and city council, by the virtue of the authority vested by the City of Lamarque, Texas, do hereby recognize and proclaim the month of April 2021 as Child Abuse Awareness Month. In the City of Lamarque, we do hereby urge all citizens and businesses and professional bodies to help reduce child abuse and neglect significantly in years to come. In testimony whereof, witness my signature and the seal of the City of Lamarque, Texas, this 12th day of April, Keith Bell, Mayor. 3B, Fair Housing Month. Office of the Mayor of the City of Lamarque proclamation. Whereas the Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 as amended prohibits discrimination in housing and declares it a national policy to provide within constitutional limits fair housing in the United States. And whereas the principle of fair housing is not only national law and national policy, but a fundamental human concept and entitlement for all Americans. And whereas the National Fair Housing Law during the month of April provides an opportunity for all Americans to recognize the complete success in the goal of equal housing opportunities can only be accomplished with the help and cooperation of all Americans. Now be it resolved that the Lamarque City Council urges everyone in the community to become aware of and to participate and support the fair housing rules and regulations. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council, by virtue of the authority vested by the City of Lamarque, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Fair Housing Month. The City of Lamarque, and do hereby urge all citizens of this locality to become aware of and support the fair housing law, and testimony whereof witnessed by hand and seal of the City of Lamarque, Texas, this 12th day of April 2021, Keith Bell, Mayor. 3C, proclamation, telecommunicators month. Office of the Mayor of the City of Lamarque proclamation. Whereas the past year has been exceedingly taxing on public safety personnel, from facing tense political and social climates to battling an ever-changing global pandemic, these professionals have been out on the front lines every step of the way. And whereas the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics in the case of emergency is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact of our citizens have with emergency services, and are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing information and assuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of Lamarque have contributed substantially to the safety of our citizens, apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients while exhibiting compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. And now, therefore, we, the City Council of Lamarque, declares the week of April 11th through 17th, 2021 as National Public Safety Communicators Week, in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. In testimony whereof, witness my hand and the seal of the City of Lamarque, this 12th day of April, 2021, Keith Bell, Mayor. Item 4, approval of minutes. We'll take these council all at once. 4A, workshop minutes for March 8th, 2021. 4B, regular meeting minutes of March 8th, 2021. 4C, special meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2021. And 4D, special meeting minutes of April 1st, 2021. Are there any council additions or corrections to these minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure passes unanimously. 5A, public hearing. Conduct a public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number O-2021-0005, prescribing the type of notice to be given for public hearings on large-scale updates and corrections to the city zoning map. Robin, do you have the time?
I do. It is 9:02.
Our regular scheduled meeting will close at 9:02. Our public hearing will open at 9:02. Is there any persons wishing to speak to item 5A? Any persons wishing to speak to item 5A? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Robin, do you have time?
9:03.
We'll close the public hearing at 9:03, and we'll reopen the regular scheduled meeting at 9:03, and we will move to item 6A, old business. Discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number, the letter O-2021-0005, prescribing the type of notice to be given for public hearings on large scale updates and corrections to the city's zoning map. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair passes unanimously. Item 6B. Discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0004, amending City Code Section 2.9, establishing a policy for appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, and assigning the mayor to the Lamarque Economic Development Corporation Board as an ex officio non-voting member. This item has been tabled. There is a recommendation for this item to be tabled tonight. council has agreed to provide in writing additions and deletions from this existing ordinance to Mr. Jackson by Friday, close of business, 12 p.m. This item will come back to us for a vote, I believe, before April is up. There are other potential meetings on our April calendar. I believe that we can entertain this as well. Certainly, we will do so expeditiously. Hearing all of that preface, I would love to entertain a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Show this ordinance table. 7A, new business. Discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0006, changing the zoning district from R1 single family residential to R2 two family residential, lots 13 and 14, Wentzville Edition, abstract 150, located near the end of Briar Lane, Marque, Texas. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7B, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number letter O-2021-0007, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for various fund expenditures by decreasing various fund balances and increasing certain expenditures to individual budget accounts in various funds and increasing certain revenues in various funds as set forth in Exhibit A. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I
Is there a
second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I do have just some clarifications. On Exhibit A, the item, I don't know if Susie's still on or whomever, Mr. City Manager. For example, midway down, it says disaster fund balance, disaster fund balance. And it shows the expenditure item, and then it shows, I guess, the expenditure, but I'm not seeing balances. Like, so I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, that statement, fund balance.
When it's talking about fund balance, it's just talking about where the money came from. It's not saying that's what the balance is.
Okay.
It's the name of the account.
It's the name of the account.
And so we're still, early on, I remember asking the question about, are we within our suggested balances, like on our reserve and things of that nature? Susie, are we still all within our normal appropriate reserves?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7C, discussion possible action regarding a request for the sponsorship of the Big Crawfish Bash for 2021. We've heard from Quentin. We've heard the work that his charitable organization and this event has done for the young people, not only of our community, but for the young people of various communities. We heard and we understand the work that this organization and this event does for the veterans, not only of our community, but veterans of other communities. He's seeking sponsorship of approximately $12,000. Certainly, we understand that the economic impact to our community will more than match that. Also, he is also suggesting that they will be good partners with us and donate back to us for some of our activities. And so I would love to entertain a motion to approve the city's sponsorship of this event.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second.
Let me say this. Those sponsorship monies sounds like from Mr. Jackson, can come from our hotel motel tax fund. This fund is limited to investments that will promote our city and that will promote tourism in our city. So this fits perfectly in that scope. Let me also remind you that we did not have last year Bayou Fest, so there should be monies from that missed opportunity to support and to sponsor this opportunity. Is there any other discussion as it relates to this?
I did want to ask, because this came up in the special meeting we had. Did Quentin and the team at Crawfish Bash send in their safety plan that featured specifically COVID management?
Yes, we received it.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7D, discussion possible action regarding ratifying the city manager's approval of expenditures to Android Construction LLC for costs involved in emergency distribution center system water, rehabilitation caused by Winter Storm Uri in the amount of $202,106.28. Mr. Jackson, would you just in layman's terms, very briefly, describe for us so that we can describe for our constituents, perhaps many of them are still watching, what this $202,000 was used to do?
This was repair, Mayor. This was repairs on our water system. So all the broken water lines, the larger lines, when we kept telling you guys that we had brought in a contractor to assist with those so we could try to get our system back up and running and get our approvals to lift the boil water. Notice Android was the company that came in and helped with all those large scale repairs. So 12-inch lines, 8-inch lines, 10-inch lines, they did a bunch of those repairs. And this was the cost for that.
Gotcha. Android, just to put it in a bow. Android did the water supply, and Texas Pride did the sewer.
That is pretty accurate, right, Chase?
Yes, sir. That is accurate.
Okay.
All right. Just want to make sure that the community understands and knows the folks, they start traveling around repairing our infrastructure. It's time for us to write them a check. So I wanted them to put those apples and oranges in one big basket so that they can know what's what. All right. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
I second.
Any other discussion?
I may have missed this, Tink, but we're submitting this for reimbursement, 75% on the public assistance side under FEMA.
We are working on that right now. We're still working with Tatum on, they're still trying to get the finalization of the federal declaration and agreement. But Susie has been uploading stuff. We've had a couple of meetings with Tatum, and we are feverishly working on this.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7E, discussion possible action regarding the potential expansion of the SBA hub zone in Lamarque, Texas. We've just heard from Mr. Getty. It sounds like they are needing us to give them direction. It sounds like we're looking for a motion to approve Mr. Getty to pursue this designation. Would that be accurate, Mr. Getty?
Yes, sir. That'll get me where I need to go.
All righty. So we'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
I second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7F, discussion possible action regarding appointments and or reappointments to fill various positions on boards and commissions. Does council have any appointments that they would like to make tonight?
Mayor, I have one, and it is for Board of Adjustments. We've had problems with attendance on there. We have lost our chairperson. The chairperson for that particular board is set by council. And I think we need a strong person that can enforce those attendance rules. I'm going to nominate David Pennington for that position. He's already on that board, but I think he could take care of those issues. And I am deferring any other appointments for the newly elected person that comes in District C.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have questions about Mr. Misch's nomination of Mr. Pennington, or does anyone have any other persons they would like to nominate for the position of chairperson on the Board of Adjustment? Okay, does any other persons have any other appointments? Hearing none, I would like to appoint, it looks like our Building Standards Commission only has one alternate, 5 members. Looks like Robin placed for us a friendly reminder that we can add alternate members so long as they don't exceed 8. We only have 1, and there is an application in our packet of a person named Joy Blackburn. And her second board preference is Building Standards Commission. So I would like to appoint Mrs. Joy Blackburn of 2219 Scott Street as an alternate on our Building Standards Commission. Again, one more time, any other appointments? I've made an appointment. Mr. Mischich has made an appointment. Is there a second on these nominations?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Pennington and Mrs. Blackburn on your appointment. We are now at item 7G, discussion possible action regarding canceling the regular city council meeting scheduled May 10th, 2021, and scheduling a special meeting for May 17th, 2021. The city manager and I have discussed this for a few moments, and this is the recommendation that I'm making to you for several reasons. Number one, our election is on May 1st. There is a certain time frame that has to pass before we as council can canvass the vote or accept the election. After that, what we have found is that the new council, none of the new council will have had been ceremoniously sworn in. I have been sworn in, Mr. Compion and Ms. McAuliffe have been sworn in for purposes to function as council members, but none of us, nor will the 2 new council persons, nor will any of us have had the opportunity to have a ceremonial swearing in. And so Tink and I wanted to provide that memorable experience to those that will be on the council for the first time, and perhaps even in Councilwoman McCullough's situation, she has a new baby. And so clearly, if it's safe, I'm sure she would want her family to share in this experience with her to create those memories. And so May 1st is the election. We'll have to canvass. We'll have a swearing in. But even more important than that, we have found that the next Mayor and Council Association meeting, Galveston County Mayor and Council Association, the next meeting is on May 10th. That's important because everyone, with the exception of Casey and potentially me, will be new to the council. Joe just having recently became a council member. So we want to allow for the Lamarque delegation to meet with the Mayor and Council Association so that we can begin developing those relationships, because that can only benefit Lamarque. And so we want to provide a free space and time for all of us, including the city manager, to participate in county functions to build those relationships. And so all of that has worked its way into this idea that perhaps we should move our regularly scheduled meeting back to the 17th of May. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about any of those things that I've just shared with you? No questions, no concerns. Very good. If we are all in agreement that we need to take this item up, I will entertain a motion for approval.
A second.
Who
I'm sorry, I make the motion.
There's a second.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure, it passes unanimously. It also gives us a chance to have Councilman Mistich for one more meeting so we can say a proper goodbye to him. So we're excited to have him in our canvassing of votes so we can let him know how we appreciate his service. Item 7H, discussion possible action regarding adopting resolution number R-2021-0009 to deny Texas New Mexico Power's electric rate increase request for the maximum period allowed by law. Dira described for us what this was about in our workshop, so I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Just a clarification, Ms. Jira, this is just Texas, New Mexico that made this request. CenterPoint hasn't made a similar request as of yet?
Not that we're aware of at this point. Once it comes through, there'll likely be a matching resolution to deny a rate increase for CenterPoint also.
And to be clear, this does not assure that our opposition alone is not assurance that there will not be a rate increase approved. Is that accurate?
Very, very accurate. We're just passing the resolution saying that we're denying it, so then it'll start going through all of the process and admin hearings.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We do not have an executive session tonight, I don't believe. And so we'll move to item 9. Item 9 is request and announcements from council. And we will start with Mr. Campion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, once again, well, first of all, I need to thank the homeowners in the area of Partridge Street and between Garrett and Fleming Street for a great neighborhood meeting. I think Ms. Phillips is no longer on the meeting, but as I recall, Ms. Phillips and her husband, and then Ms. Hope and her husband. I found out that as apart and different from the stagnant water issue, but we have what's it called, Mayor? You were at the meeting at the big snail. What's it? An invasive species. An invasive species here in Lamarck. The snail that is actually has some health concerns if you touch it. And but I want to thank the neighbors that came out and participated in the meeting. I think that we all learned a lot about our community together, and so it was delightful. And I want to encourage other parts of at least District B and the other parts of the city as well to organize similar sort of neighborhood meetings. And I appreciate that so much. And the second thing is just remember, and I've said it before, we've got this group of guys in Austin that are out there passing all sorts of bills. Some of them are kind of crazy, and we need to be aware of them. And you have a voice. You can participate and sign in just like we're doing now and voice your opposition to the bills as well. So don't be shy. You're certainly not shy when you call us up on issues, or you call the city manager, you call the city attorney or other departments. So please let the guys in Austin know too that some of these bills are completely unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capion. Mr. Mistich.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I've got one item. It was brought to my attention by an individual who served our community during this freeze and served a lot of food and water and whatnot to folks at his cost. And that was Mr. Joseph Lowry with Six Brothers Concrete. It seems as though the recognition award that was given to him through the Clean City, it had a mistake. It listed his name as Jeff Lowry. And I want to see that gets corrected. I know it really upset him for some reasons. I'm not here to debate those reasons, but when we make a mistake, and I include myself in that because it's we as council, we as the city, regardless of where it initiates from, if we don't catch those mistakes, then we're all at fault. And it's an embarrassment, and no matter how it turned out, it becomes an insult to the person. And I would like to publicly apologize to Mr. Lowry and assure him that that will be corrected. And we do appreciate his service. And I know everybody that was fed and given things to drink and hot chocolate, they really thank him too. If we don't have something happens and we don't have this special meeting, I would like to say thank you to everybody that has supported me in my district and across this city. It's been a very rewarding 6 years, trying at times, but I encourage everyone to participate in their government and offices because it's our home. And to you, Mayor Bell, I am looking forward to your win on May 1st. I support you, and I ask that everybody give you their support because we have to succeed as a city, and there are going to be changes, and I think you're the right person to lead us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mistich. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
I just wanted to bring up Beautify the Bayou that's happening this Saturday. And Tink, maybe you can mention some of the details. All I know is I'm bringing a kayak and I'm cleaning up stuff in the bayou. And I don't know if Chief will be there again with his kayak.
Starts at 10 o'clock. Chief will be there with his kayak. Actually, he's bringing both of them because we're going to put Dara in the other one and she's going to help clean up too. Starts at 10 o'clock. We'll go to 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it takes. It shouldn't be as bad as it was last year because we took truckloads of stuff out of there last year. So 10 o'clock, and we'll hope to see everybody out there.
Yeah, well, I really hope some folks come out, and especially since it's been such lovely weather, and I'm excited about doing something that feels somewhat normal, and also getting in the kayak and trying to beat Chief and pick up more things than him. Thanks. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCollum. Certainly, we look forward to doing the work of community on Saturday. I'm not going to belabor the point. Casey just emphasized it, and Tink has just helped us with understanding it. We want to applaud the workers and the volunteers that showed up on last Saturday to the shredding event that was held at City Hall. I visited with the group. They gave me a tour of the truck, and there was more shred in that truck than I thought that we had in the entire city of Lamar, which suggests that many people are taking advantage of opportunities to be good citizens, good global citizens, good neighbors, so on and so forth. And I want to applaud you. Throughout the spring, there are going to be many opportunities for us to continue to do that. And I encourage us to continue to do that. Do the work of community to make sure that our community is clean, to make sure that our community is compassionate, to make sure that our community is consistent. All of those things take the role of citizenry to do its part. I wanted to also say a little bit about the incident with Joseph Lowry. I believe that Mr. Lowry has done a good thing in this winter storm. I believe that he's done great things in the city of Lamarque at various times of him being a resident of our city. And let me say this, whether things happen intentionally or unintentionally, things hurt, and they hurt people. And it doesn't matter how you may feel about it or how another person may feel about it. What matters most important, if you're really going to have a compassionate community and a community that cares for itself, what matters is how other people are feeling when they've had an experience. And Mr. Lowry was offended by receiving this award with his name being misspelled. Let me also say this. Let me say that the council gave Mr. Lowry a proclamation where we got his name right. Myself and the members of this council, certainly he appreciated that. And he understands that, we as a council stepped up and we did the right thing. But that doesn't negate the hurt that people have when they do their best. And it seems like they did not get the recognition. And so doesn't matter how it happened. All that matters is a member of our community is offended. And so we ought to make it right. I believe that we're going to make it right. And certainly as the leader of this city, one of the things that I need to do is I need to model the behavior that I expect others to follow. And so on behalf of this city and on behalf of this council, Mr. Lowry, I apologize to you for whatever happened, whether it was a mistake or however you feel about it. I can't make a determination in this capacity, but what I can do is acknowledge that you were hurt and acknowledge that we're going to try to do right by you and make it right because it's the right thing to do. And so look forward to that. And I look forward to visiting with you on that in the future. The last thing that I want to say, and I'm going to be very limited in what I say about this, It is voting season. As a citizen of this community, you have an opportunity to exercise your citizenry by voting. Certainly go to our website to find the dates and the times and the scenarios. I'm not telling you those because I am a candidate on the ballot. But I am telling you as your mayor to make your voice known by exercising your right to vote. If there's nothing further, Mr. Jackson, do you have anything?
Mayor, I will send you guys the report right after the meeting on the COVID operations plan. Just real quick, positivity rates have dropped from 10.37 the week after our last meeting down to 8.12. I'll get that out to you, and we'll have an update to the policy at the next meeting.
Mr. Jackson, I'm glad you said that. You and I have had preliminary conversations about us returning to in-person meetings and also us reopening City Hall. Do you have an update for us on that you'd like to share?
Well, so we are seeing the rates come down. We're working very hard right now trying to make sure that we give our staff members a full opportunity to participate in vaccinations before we get to that point, and they have the vaccinations long enough for them to be fully effective based on the best science that we have right now. The time frame for anyone to get the vaccine it has opened up. We have employees that are between their first and second round of the vaccine right now, and of course it's 2 weeks after before it's fully effective. So I'm thinking by the 1st of May we should be pretty close.
Okay, and just lastly, so we don't get tapped on the shoulder by DERA, it's our contemplation that our ceremonies and our meetings in May will all be in person. At this point, that's what we're looking at, right?
Definitely would like to see them that way, but if nothing else, we may do a hybrid of some kind, depending on what council's comfortable with. I mean, if we have council members that want to have a thing where they get to have their family there and do it, but they're not comfortable with the full thing, then we may do a hybrid version. We'll talk about that more as we get closer.
Gotcha. Good deal. Anything else? Well, guys, I enjoyed you. Again, thank you for your service. This is not an easy thing to do.
Mayor, one more thing real quick, please.
Yes,
we
sir.
do have a mobile vaccination clinic for tomorrow here in town for our citizens. It will be beginning at 10 o'clock in the parking lot at Pastor Hallam's church at Abundant Life. They can sign up online right now for a specific time spot. If they don't sign up online for a specific, if they don't sign up, they can just show up over there and fill out the paperwork and get it. We have the potential to vaccinate 1,000 people over there tomorrow with their first round, and then they will come back 3 weeks later for the second round. It is the Pfizer vaccine, and that will be tomorrow from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. So it'll be getting pushed out everywhere. We're going to have it. It's on our social media and stuff right now. We're going to do some other pushes tomorrow to get the information out to our people.
Good deal. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Jackson. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
The second.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Good night, people. I enjoyed you.